Chapter 408. Emperor Tianhui had originally ordered the Duke of Qin to stay in the disaster areas until spring plowing began before returning to the capital. It was obvious that he wanted to keep His Highness Duke of Qin in the midst of his troubles and away from the center of Tianning's power. Unexpectedly, the disaster relief work in the disaster areas had already been completed before spring plowing began. All that was left was to wait for the right time to arrive. Under these circumstances, the longer the Duke of Qin stayed in South Ning Prefecture, the easier it would be for him to establish a foundation there and gain complete control over it and the other two prefectures. After all, the three prefectural governors of the three disaster regions could be said to be the three most important prefectures in Tianning's central region. Together, they were basically equal to half of Tianning's central region. They were the hub that connected the north and south of Tianning, as well as the most populous regions in Tianning. Once the Duke of Qin took control of these three prefectures, his power in Tianning would be like a tiger that had grown wings. How could Emperor Tianhui not be worried? Now that he was lying on his sickbed, he realized that sending the Duke of Qin south had been a mistake. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Emperor Tianhui's eunuch Lu had already been sitting in the guest hall of Jiangnan's plum blossom courtyard for half a day. Unfortunately, he still hadn't met with His Highness Duke of Qin or esteemed Wang Fei. It was Chu Shifeng who came out to meet him. Eunuch Lu, His Highness is ill and inconvenient to receive you. I ask for your forgiveness. Chu Shifeng was very polite. Eunuch Lu didn't dare to accept such courtesy, but quickly bowed with hands clasped in front. Guard Chu is overcompensating me. I wonder if His Highness has made any arrangements to return to the capital? Eunuch Lu, His Highness has been overworked recently and it's inconvenient for him to travel long distances. The doctor said we'll have to observe him for a while. Thus, there's no telling when he'll return, Chu Shifeng replied helplessly. Eunuch Lu knew that this was a difficult task, but what else could he do besides tell Emperor Tianhui the truth? In his heart, dealing with Emperor Tianhui was much easier than dealing with His Highness Duke of Qin. Just like that, Eunuch Lu returned with an uncertain time. Emperor Tianhui nearly jumped out of his sickbed at these words. Even an idiot would know that the Duke of Qin was doing this on purpose. It was bad enough that he didn't return immediately, but he didn't even give him time. Someone come, issue an edict. Jin doesn't believe that I can't summon him back. Emperor Tianhui was about to faint from anger. Noble Consort Shui, who was waiting on the side, hurriedly stopped him. Your Majesty, please calm down. This must not happen. Emperor Tianhui glowered at her, causing Noble Consort Shui to quickly bow. Your Majesty, the Duke of Qin is currently in the limelight in the central regions. Now he's using exhaustion and illness as an excuse to refuse to return. If news of your Highness's decree spreads, what will the common people think? Emperor Tianhui grew even angrier at her words. What do you think? Could it be that they wanted to rebel? Or do they think Long Fei Yi is in charge of Tianning? Your Majesty, please calm down. Qinxia definitely did not have such intentions. It's just that those lowly commoners have never been able to distinguish right from wrong. Whoever gives them benefits, they will side with that person. This was especially true for the southern and northern Ning counties, where the folk customs had always been valiant. I hope your Highness will reconsider and not fall into the Duke of Qin's trap. Finally, Emperor Tianhui listened to Noble Consort Shui's explanation. He wasn't so ignorant as to fail to see through the intricacies of the situation, but he was too angry to think straight. After a period of silence, Emperor Tianhui had no choice but to summon Eunuch Lu back. Write up an imperial edict. The Duke of Qin has rendered meritorious service in relieving the disaster areas. When he returns to the capital, he'll be richly rewarded. As for Gu Beiyue, Emperor Tianhui paused before changing his tune. Summon Imperial Physician Huang and have him bring the best medicine to treat the Duke of Qin's illness. If Emperor Tianhui wanted to win back the hearts of the people, treating the Duke of Qin well was his only choice. Your Majesty, the Imperial Physician Courtyard has 2 Imperial Physician Huangs. Which one are you referring to? Eunuch Luo asked in a low voice. Huang Gingchen. His medical skills are second only to Gu Beiyue's. Remember, tell him to treat the Duke of Qin as soon as possible. Emperor Tianhui emphasized. Without a doubt, he wanted to send Imperial Physician Huang to hurry the Duke of Qin. Would the Duke of Qin be able to keep up the pretense if the Imperial Physician was already there? Gu Beiyue had been waiting by the sickbed the entire time. He watched Eunuch Luo's retreating form with a silent smile. When the Empress Dowager had made things difficult for him and forced him to stay at the Duke of Qin's estate, it was Imperial Physician Huang who had secretly treated him. Although Han Yunxi didn't know the relationship between him and Imperial Physician Huang, Han Yunxi and Imperial Physician Huang were still friends. Seeing that things had come to an end, noble Consort Shui quickly offered up a decoction of medicine. Your Majesty, please calm your anger. Your health is more important. Noble Consort Shui was still young, barely in her early 20s. She ranked 3rd among the 4 noble consorts and was the imperial uncle's concubine's daughter. She was also the Empress Dowager's niece. The imperial uncle's estate had fallen from power, but Empress Dowager Li was still alive, so noble Consort Shui hadn't been affected much. Of the 4 noble consorts, the second imperial son's mother, noble Consort Xiao, had fallen out of favor. Noble Consort Ning stayed at home and didn't fight for her place, while noble Consort Yun had been poisoned to death. Noble Consort Shui had taken advantage of the situation to win the emperor's favor. Add to that the Empress Dowager's support, and she was now the most glorious person in the palace. Emperor Tianhui drank his medicine as he flipped through memorials to the throne. Suddenly, he saw a memorial from the Ministry of Rights asking for a marriage alliance between West Chu and the Princess of West Chu. The Princess of West Chu was none other than Chu Qingge. Because she represented West Chu in this marriage alliance, the West Chu Emperor had conferred her the title of Princess of West Chu. Chu Qingge's status was noble to begin with, but now that she'd been conferred such a title, the struggle for the throne would become interesting once she married into Tianning. Whether it was the imperial court or the harem, plenty of people wanted to depose the insane empress. Noble Consort Shui stole a glance at the memorial from the Ministry of Rights, her heart uneasy. She'd seen Chu Qingge before. Heaven knows what kind of chaos Tianning's harem would cause if that woman came. Noble Consort Shui thought it over before deciding to find Crown Prince Consort Mu Luiyue to discuss the matter. After all, they were in the same boat. If Mu Luiyue wanted to become empress in the future, she'd have to support the crown prince to seize the throne. She'd have to nip any potential threats in the bud. Late that night, noble Consort Shui personally went to the Eastern Palace to see Mu Luiyue. But Mu Luiyue simply ignored her warning. Even if Chu Qingge can give His Majesty an imperial son as soon as she arrives, what kind of waves can a baby in swaddling clothes cause? Noble Consort Shui, you're underestimating His Highness Crown Prince too much. Mu Luiyue's sufferings in the Eastern Palace were only known to its members. In front of outsiders, she could only puff herself up at her own cost and pretend as if nothing had happened while wholeheartedly protecting His Highness Crown Prince. Luiyue, it's not that I'm underestimating the Crown Prince, but you're the one who's underestimating Western Zhou's Chu clan. Noble Consort Shui said sincerely. Forget it, forget it. Leave these matters for the Crown Prince's advisors to worry about. It's getting late, so noble Consort Shui should go back, Mu Luiyue said impatiently. Noble Consort Shui was currently favored by the emperor and was the perfect person to blow pillow talk to. Who wouldn't curry favor with her? But Mu Luiyue, the crown prince's consort, didn't put her in her eyes at all. In the end, noble consort Shui relied on the Empress Dowager, who placed all her hopes on the crown prince. No matter how angry noble consort Shui was, she couldn't do anything to Muluyue. After sending noble consort Shui off, Muluyue immediately issued orders. Someone come, prepare a generous gift for me. I'm going to give it to Chu Qingge. Actually, Muluyue had been thinking about Chu Qingge's marriage even before noble consort Shui's arrival. Muluyue's only thought was that Chu Qingge hated Han Yunxi to the core, just as she hated Han Yunxi. In other words, they were on the same boat. She couldn't count on the crown prince, so she only hoped that Chu Qingge would marry into her family so they could plot revenge together. Han Yunxi was still far away in Jiangnan's plum blossom garden. If she knew about Muluyue's plans, what would she think? She didn't care much about Chu Qingge's marriage. Even the Empress Dowager couldn't do anything to her, much less a newbie in the imperial harem. Right now, she was more concerned about when Long Feiyi would be willing to return to the capital. She thought that her leisurely days were numbered, but Long Feiyi still hadn't returned. When Imperial Physician Huang showed up, she didn't need to show her face. Chu Shifeng sent him away with a few words. Was he really going to make Emperor Tianhui beg him for help like he said? That was worth looking forward to. Today, General Bailey sent a messenger pigeon with news of Fishery Island. Han Yunxi glanced at the letter and smiled. The effects of the medicine are about to wear off. The ice on Fishery Island's illusory sea lake had already begun to melt. Her medicine was about to wear off as well, so there was no need to keep fishing. Long Feiyi had long stopped caring about the matter. Cold, he said, Chu Shifeng, send orders to guard Fishery Island to the death. Don't slack off a single bit. Jun Yixia was still trapped on Fishery Island. Long Feiyi had given him two choices, die at sea, or die of old age on Fishery Island. Han Yunxi knew that this man was still angry, so she quietly offered him a cup of tea. After some hesitation, she said, Your Highness, I'm afraid news of what happened on Fishery Island will spread very quickly. Han Yunxi didn't finish, but the matter was very troublesome. For one thing, Long Feiyi had mobilized an entire navy to deal with a single Jun Yixia. If Emperor Tianhui found out, he'd definitely pursue the matter. Although General Bailey was one of Long Feiyi's men, the navy still belonged to the imperial court in name. Secondly, once news of Jun Yixia's grudge against her and her husband spread, heaven knows how many people would use her loss as an excuse to slap Long Feiyi in the face. Thirdly, once news of the chastity mark spread, the Empress Dowager would never let it go. Fourthly, Jun Yixia was using Northern Li's boats. Someone in the imperial court would definitely know that he'd come to Fishery Island, so they'd make a fuss about it too. Han Yunxi's considerations were all necessary. Long Feiyi naturally knew all of this, but he still replied to Han Yunxi, Don't worry. Go make preparations, I'll take you out for a spring walk tomorrow. A spring walk. Your Highness is in such a good mood. Han Yunxi laughed. If this fellow was in such a good mood, then she didn't need to worry about any of those troubles. Spring plowing had already begun, making it the perfect time for all living things to recover. The grass was long and the orioles were flying. The weather was neither hot nor cold, and the scenery was perfect. Wouldn't it be romantic to go out for a walk at this time? His Highness Duke of Qin was a man of interests as well. Han Yunxi really didn't want to go back to the capital. As soon as Han Yunxi left, a guard arrived. Your Highness, there's news from Gu Qisha. He wants to meet you on the 15th of next month. Long Feiyi's cold eyes flickered with emotion. Did he find those two ingredients? He didn't say. He only asked for the 15th of next month. Please set the location, Your Highness, the guard replied. He's still in Medicine Ghost Valley. Tell him your lordship will definitely arrive on time. Long Fei said. Chapter 409. The aftermath of the Fishery Island incident was going to be troublesome. Coupled with the matter of Mute Granny in the 7 noble families, Long Fei was actually very, very busy. She didn't know where he got the mood to take the initiative to accompany Han Yunxi on a spring outing. Han Yunxi didn't know how many things Long Fei had to deal with, but despite her happiness, she still felt that this spring outing was probably not as simple as it seemed. But reality proved that Long Fei really was just accompanying her for a walk. The two of them sat in the large open carriage. Long Fei took Han Yunxi's hand and pressed it on his knee. His movements were so natural. Han Yunxi glanced at him and felt an indescribable feeling. The two of them were always indifferent. There was nothing vigorous, and there were no vows of undying love. It was as if they had only been together for a short time and were very unfamiliar with each other. However, there were always a few inadvertent small movements that gave Han Yunxi the illusion that she had been with him for most of her life. Han Yunxi gently placed her other hand on Long Fei's hand and leaned on his shoulder. "Your Highness, Long Fei said indifferently. "It's nothing, I just wanted to call you a little," Han Yunxi smiled. She didn't know what Long Fei's expression was, but in short, he fell silent. Not long after, Han Yunxi called out again. "Your Highness." This time, Long Fei didn't answer her. Han Yunxi pouted and didn't say much. But after a while, she suddenly said, "Long Fei." Long Fei still didn't say anything, but Han Yunxi clearly felt his hand stiffen. Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh as she leaned on his shoulder. At this moment, Long Fei said coldly, "You've got guts." Although his voice was cold, Han Yunxi was no longer afraid of him. In the past, she was often timid, but this time, she was no longer afraid of him because he was so fierce. This woman must have forgotten the consequences of playing a prank on Long Fei in the black market. She was still laughing foolishly. How was this a prank? She was clearly teasing the Duke of Qin. Long Fei turns to look at him. Seeing his cold expression, Han Yunxi immediately holds back her laughter, but the smile still comes out from her eyes. In a good mood. Long Fei raised his eyebrows and asked. Han Yunxi nodded honestly. This was their first time going on a trip. In modern terms, it could be considered a date. "Do you want something better?" Long Fei asked again. "Something better?" Han Yunxi was a little bewildered. Before she could figure it out, Long Fei had already cupped the back of her head and leaned in to seal her lips with a kiss. This kiss had a hint of punishment and was especially forceful. She really did have guts. He used so much force, but she didn't show any weakness and counterattacked. Unknowingly, the two of them were lost in their passion. Even though his large hand was holding the back of her head, she still couldn't bear it and fell backwards. She fell backwards, but he didn't help her. Instead, he leaned down and covered her full body with his large hand. Han Yunxi was shocked and unconsciously pushed him away. Long Fei. Long Fei was also awake. His deep eyes were bottomless and she didn't know what he was thinking. He looked at her for a while before pulling her up. The two of them sat down and fell into silence. The driver sitting in front of them straightened his body. Not to mention looking back, he didn't even dare to move. He was at a loss. His Highness Duke of Qin had always been conservative and didn't like women. When did he develop such a bad habit? It looked like he had to prepare a curtain for this open carriage, just in case. Leaving Jiangnan's plum blossom courtyard, the carriage drove into the mountains. The entire journey was full of spring. Everywhere was lush green, the streams gurgling, and the green lawns on both sides were full of unknown wildflowers. Butterflies fluttered in the air, and a shepherd boy played his flute. Han Yunxi didn't like tall buildings, pavilions, or famous mountains and rivers. What she loved the most was this kind of simple scenery and fresh air. Unfortunately, she didn't have time to care. She lowered her head and sat upright. Her heart was still beating wildly. Just now, it was so dangerous. It turned out that such a cold and indifferent man also had a time when he turned into a wolf. Even though it was very abnormal for her to still have the chastity mark after marriage, it was a kind of shame. However, that was only in the eyes of outsiders. She was very clear that she and Long Feiyi were only husband and wife in name. Ever since she cured him of the poison on their wedding night, they had always been in a business relationship. Now that they were together, it could be called fate or an accident. Han Yunxi was in a daze, her thoughts running wild. However, not long after, Long Feiyi pulled her into his embrace. He acted as if nothing had happened and said indifferently to the coachman, "There's a tea garden up ahead. Let's rest there." The coachman was an outsider, but he was even more nervous than Han Yunxi. He quickly replied, "Yes, yes." The tea garden that Long Feiyi mentioned was called Drunken Tea House. It was a leisure tea garden similar to the Heavenly Fragrance Tea House. Generally speaking, the first batch of spring tea would be released around the Qingming festival. However, this drunken tea house had a type of tea called drunken tea. It was released around this time. It was obvious that Long Feiyi was an honored guest of this tea house. He had deliberately brought Han Yunxi here to taste tea. In their exclusive courtyard, the two sat cross-legged across from each other. There was only a tea boy to serve them. Han Yunxi liked to drink tea, but she wasn't a tea fanatic. However, after following Long Feiyi for a long time, she was also influenced by him. Gradually, she had the habit of drinking tea every day. Drunken tea, this is the first time I've heard of it. Han Yunxi took the teacup and secretly activated the detoxification system to analyze the tea's composition. Who knew that it really did have alcohol composition, and it wasn't low? This cup of tea was probably equivalent to a cup of wine. They had just sat down, but Long Feiyi had already drunk 2 cups. Han Yunxi couldn't help but have a little idea in her heart. She really wanted to know how this guy looked like when he was drunk. Her alcohol tolerance wasn't good. She only took a sip and then started to order pastries. He drank tea, she ate tea. It was already a rule. He said that in the future, she would order tea. Without exception, she ordered a table of sweets. "Your Highness, try it. It tastes good." Han Yunxi definitely didn't know that Long Feiyi basically didn't eat sweet things. Long Feiyi only took a small sip and then put it down. "It's just a suso. Then try this." When it came to delicious food, it must be shared to have fun. Helpless, Long Feiyi only smelled it and didn't even touch it. "It's too greasy." Han Yunxi gave up. She tasted it happily. She always felt that the tea and pastries were different from other places, but she couldn't tell why. In the end, Long Feiyi drank a pot of drunken tea. His mind was still sober, but Han Yunxi was drunk. No one told her that the tea and pastries here were all added with drunken tea powder. Like tea, there was no alcohol taste, but the alcohol content was much higher than tea. Looking at the drunk Han Yunxi lying on the table, Long Feiyi's mouth curved into a helpless smile. "Sir Long, these tea and pastries are easy to get drunk. Why didn't you remind her?" The servant couldn't help asking. "If she likes it, let her be. She'll wake up after a nap," Long Feiyi said mildly. After helping Han Yunxi put on a cloak, he drank his tea as if he was drinking wine, forming a world of his own. He really didn't have any ulterior motives, but simply wanted to take Han Yunxi out to relieve her boredom. Whatever she liked, he was happy to do as she wished. As long as she was happy. The servant didn't ask any more questions, but quietly waited on them. The garden was filled with spring colors, and the tea smoke rose in spirals. It was extremely cozy. Unexpectedly, the sleeping Han Yunxi suddenly started to mumble in her sleep. "Your Highness. Your Highness," Long Fei Yi quickly set down his teacup, as if wanting to hear what she was saying. Without a choice, Han Yunxi only kept saying, "Your Highness." Her voice was as soft as water, enough to soften one's heart. "Your Highness. Your Highness. Yunxi really likes you." Long Fei Yi gave a start before he recovered his senses. He quietly looked at Han Yunxi, his eyes filled with a never-before-seen tenderness. He sat down by her side and stroked back a few strands of her hair. Her cheeks were pink, her drunken beauty beautiful, and her eyebrows filled with the air of a young girl. As Long Fei stared and stared, he suddenly felt heartache for some reason. "Han Yunxi, you meeting your lordship, was it right? Was it wrong?" After settling Han Yunxi into a guest room in the courtyard, Long Fei Yi sat alone by the door to keep watch. He was only going out on a trip, but many things still came knocking on his door. Soon enough, a guard came to report. "Your Highness, Northern Li's imperial clan has sent a letter to His Majesty, reprimanding General Bailey for sending troops to besiege Jun Xia for no reason. They're threatening His Majesty to either release him or prepare for war. His Majesty is urgently summoning General Bailey back to the capital." Emperor Tianhui was smart enough to only summon General Bailey instead of making a move against Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi had long predicted this, but he didn't understand what part of Jun Xia had caught the emperor's eye. Even his collusion with Duan Muyao hadn't shaken Jun Xia's position in the emperor's heart at all. "Your Highness, General Bailey is waiting for your news." The guard was still anxious. Long Fei Yi only replied, "When a general is in a foreign land, he won't obey military orders." "Your Highness, actually, many of Long Fei Yi's subordinates disapproved of Long Fei Yi's decision to send troops to besiege Fishery Island. After all, it affected the relationship between the two nations on a personal level. Tianning country's strength was waning and its court was unstable. If they started a war with Northern Li now, it'd be disadvantageous to either side." "When did you learn to waste words?" Long Fei Yi said coldly. "This subordinate obeys." The guard didn't dare say more, but left immediately. By the time Han Yunxi woke up, they'd already returned to Jiangnan's plum blossom garden. She was speechless when she realized how she'd gotten drunk. Long Fei Yi was a very bad man. She'd hardly left the room when the little guard Su Donglin told her about the Northern Dynasty's emperors warning Emperor Tianhui. Although Han Yunxi felt that Emperor Tianhui was weak, she was very clear on the difference in power between Tianning and Northern Li. She pushed open the door to the study and said, "Your Highness, Tianhui can accuse you of mutiny. Moreover, you'll be a criminal as soon as war breaks out." Long Fei Yi casually hid away the annals of the 7 noble families and asked, "How about we make a bet?" "Bet on what?" Han Yunxi didn't understand. "Bet that Northern Li won't dare to start a war," Long Fei Yi said, before adding, "Never." Han Yunxi was alarmed. Long Fei Yi might have spoken casually, but she knew he wasn't the type to speak empty words. Northern Li was the strongest country in Cloud Realm continent. Where did Long Fei Yi get his confidence from? And forever at that. Just what kind of trap was this guy planning? Chapter 410. A bet? What's at stake? Last time at the black market, Han Yunxi successfully haggled and Long Fei Yi said he would reward her handsomely. She said she wanted all of him. He asked her if she really wanted it. She thought about it carefully before replying. It sounded like a joke, but she still remembered it. "You'll have to pay back what you owe one day." "Your Highness, what's at stake?" Han Yunxi was very interested. Han Yunxi thought about it for a long time. She didn't want to say she wanted all of him. The concept was too vague. Was it what he had also hers? Han Yunxi felt that she should ask for something more practical. She bit her thumb and fell into deep thought. Long Fei Yi glanced at her. He didn't know where this woman got the confidence to make a bet with him. Han Yunxi thought for a while before saying, "Your Highness, if I win, can you bring me to Tianshan Kenzo to broaden my horizons?" Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao were both martial arts prodigies. They were both closed-door disciples of the Tianshan Kenzo sect master. He didn't know what kind of person the sect master was to dote on Duanmu Yao so much that he wanted Long Fei Yi to protect Duanmu Yao until she turned 18. As the sect master, how could he not see through Duanmu Yao's nature? "And if you lose?" Long Fei retorted. "Your Highness can set the conditions." Han Yunxi was very generous. "You're so sure you'll win?" Long Fei Yi didn't understand. This woman was so smart. Was she still dreaming? Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi laughed. "This concubine will definitely win. This concubine is betting that Northernly will never start a war first." Long Fei Yi's expression froze. Han Yunxi laughed heartily. "Han Yunxi, oh Han Yunxi. How could you play people like this? You're practically a scoundrel." Afraid that Long Fei Yi would go back on his word, Han Yunxi said anxiously, "Your Highness, we've already agreed." "You can't go back on your word. Only vile people and women are hard to deal with." What else could Long Fei Yi do? A look of helpless affection flashed across his eyes as he promised her, "Let's wait for a chance. I won't go to Tianshan Mountain in the near future." Han Yunxi was overjoyed. All right, Chinchia will remember it. Until now, this guy owed her everything and a trip to Mount Tianshan. She didn't owe him anything. "Your Highness, how can you be so sure that Northernly won't start the war? You have a brilliant plan." Is it really okay for Han Yunxi to ask this question after winning a round? Long Fei Yi glanced at her and answered, "I'm not telling you." This could be considered a small punishment for this woman's audacity. Han Yunxi felt guilty and didn't dare to ask again. She was going to wait and see what would happen. Soon enough, Chu Shifeng found out about their bet. Head guard Chu warned everyone in front of the guards, "Don't ever bet with our mistress. She has no record of losing." Han Yunxi had been pondering over the antidote for Bailey Mingxiang over the past few days. In her spare time, she studied Northern Li's situation as well. But no matter how much she understood, she couldn't figure out where Long Fei Yi got his confidence from. He was so sure that the powerful Northern Li would never start the war. After all, Northern Li revered martial arts and had always used its military might to intimidate the surrounding powers. Over the past few years, it had been Northern Li that had started all the wars on its borders. Could it be that Long Fei Yi had some sort of secret that could be used against Northern Li? Han Yunxi was ashamed of her inferiority to Long Fei Yi when it came to strategizing. In the end, she decided not to think about anything else. Over the past few days, Emperor Tianhui had urged her repeatedly. If he wasn't sending people, then he was sending letters. But Long Fei Yi had already claimed that he was ill. He didn't even bother to read the letters, but simply handed them to Chu Shifeng. Under Gu Beiyue's care, Emperor Tianhui's health had almost recovered. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi had angered him into falling ill again. Just what does he want? Does he want to rebel? A general doesn't obey military orders in a foreign land. How could he say something like that? Rebel, rebel, rebel. Jin shouldn't have pitted mother and son in the first place. I should have exterminated them. Emperor Tianhui was furious to the extreme. He huffed and puffed as he paced back and forth in his sleeping quarters. All of the servants, noble Consort Shui, and Gu Beiyue were kneeling, but none of them dared to persuade him otherwise. Emperor Tianhui dearly wished he could issue an imperial edict ordering Long Feiyi to return immediately. But he still remembered noble Consort Shui's warning. A few days ago, he'd summoned a few of his trusted officials to the imperial study. They all agreed that it wasn't a good idea to issue an imperial edict. Although an imperial edict represented the highest authority, the emperor couldn't issue it as he wished. Once he did, it would be made public. Everyone would know, and Emperor Tianhui didn't want to be labeled as an incapable ruler or a tyrant. Moreover, the Bailey Navy had surrounded Fishery Island and trapped Jun Yixia. Even if Emperor Tianhui issued an imperial edict, he wouldn't be able to do anything to Long Feiyi. General Bailey had taken responsibility for the entire affair. Although Long Feiyi had said, "A general doesn't obey military orders in a foreign land," it was General Bailey who told Emperor Tianhui about it. Long Feiyi had only briefly explained that he'd sent the navy to transport the fish, but didn't know anything else. Emperor Tianhui didn't know what to do with him. Aside from that, this was a good chance to strip General Bailey of his military power. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that at this critical juncture. First of all, Northernly was pressing them too hard. Once war broke out, Tianning would suffer from a severe famine last year. Their national coffers would be in dire straits, and it'd be impossible to prepare for a major war in the short term. Secondly, Long Feiyi and General Bailey would be forced into a corner. Judging from their current attitudes, it'd only take a single thought for them to rebel and usurp the throne. As Emperor Tianhui mused and mused, his anger gradually turned into melancholy. He didn't know why he'd been so foolish over the past few years. Unknowingly, he'd allowed the Duke of Qin's power to grow so much. He'd been on guard against him for so many years, but in the end, he couldn't stop him. Although he and the Empress Dowager both claimed that they were merciful enough to spare Grand Concubine Yi and her son, they knew the truth better than anyone else. The late emperors doting on Grand Concubine Yi and Long Feiyi's death exemption medallion were the key to saving their lives. There was no way to urge the Duke of Qin to return, nor could he issue an imperial edict. In the end, Emperor Tianhui went to find Empress Dowager Li, Muhu. There's news from Northern Li's side. They say that the incident at Fishery Island had something to do with Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi still has the gecko cinnabar mark on her arm, Emperor Tianhui said in a low voice. The news hadn't been publicized yet. Jun Yixia and Northern Li's imperial clan wouldn't be stupid enough to ruin Jun Yixia's character just to ruin Han Yunxi's reputation. Once the news spread to both countries, Jun Yixia would be condemned by the masses. Still, Empress Dowager Li could still find out through the grapevine. She'd long heard of the news. What does His Majesty mean? Empress Dowager Li asked. Aken would like to ask Muhu to show her face. As Emperor Tianhui spoke, he drew close to Empress Dowager Li's ear and whispered for a long time. The Empress Dowager nodded again and again in agreement. A few days later, Jiangnan's Plum Blossom Garden received a secret missive from the Empress Dowager. It wasn't for Long Feiyi, but Han Yunxi. Some men's struggles were caused by women, while some men's struggles were caused by women against each other. That was because women's pillow talk was the best way to influence a man's decisions. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi had just woken up and were drinking afternoon tea when Chu Shifeng handed over the missive. For me. Han Yunxi was surprised. She glanced at Long Feiyi before quickly opening the letter. The contents were lengthy and voluminous. Han Yunxi skimmed through the contents before breaking into a cold smile. Empress Dowager Li used all sorts of persuasive words and analyzed the pros and cons, but all she said was, if Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi returned to the capital and had the Bailey Navy withdraw, then she wouldn't pursue the matter of the chastity mark. She was also willing to intercede for General Bailey's unauthorized deployment of troops and guarantee that the emperor wouldn't pursue the matter, using both grace and severity to give the emperor enough face. Han Yunshi handed the missive to Long Feiyi, who didn't even read it before handing it to Chu Shifeng. "Your Highness, how should we reply?" Chu Shifeng asked modestly. "This is a secret missive for Wang Fei." "Wang Fei, do as you see fit," Long Feiyi intoned. Han Yunshi didn't think much of it, but simply told Chu Shifeng, "Just reply the same way you did before." Empress Dowager Li's missive seemed like a show of grace, but it was actually a threat. Leaving aside Long Feiyi, even Han Yunshi herself wasn't someone anyone could threaten. In the end, Chu Shifeng still shot the Duke of Qin a questioning look, but His Highness Duke of Qin didn't reply. "His mistress is getting more and more capable of making decisions," Chu Shifeng mused. Just like that, Emperor Tianhui's coercion failed again. Northern Li's imperial clan was pressing him hard. There were even rumors that the Northern Dynasty's emperors were already preparing to send troops to the three-way battlefield. Emperor Tianhui feared Northern Li's armored cavalry more than anything else in his life. He kept sending letters to Western Zhou's emperor to ask for reinforcements while sending the crown prince to invite Long Feiyi back to the capital to discuss military matters. Yes, it was an invitation. He couldn't rush or force him, so he could only invite him back. The Duke of Qin really put on airs. Empress Dowager Li's missive even demanded that the Bailey Navy withdraw its troops. A few days later, Emperor Tianhui relented and said he wanted to discuss matters instead of asking them to withdraw. It was clear to see how anxious he was. Long Tianma invited Mu Qingwu along as well, and the two of them whipped their horses into a gallop. 6 steeds were left paralyzed as they reached Jiangnan's plum blossom gardens in the shortest time possible. One was the heir apparent, the other the young general. Naturally, the Duke of Qin would receive them, but he received them in bed. March in Jiangnan was a scene of white apricots, red peach blossoms, and green willow trees. The plum blossoms in Jiangnan's plum blossom gardens had yet to fall, but were still dancing in the air. Compared to the cherry blossoms, this place lacked the romantic sweetness and had more of a desolate pride. Within the tea house, Long Feiyi was lying on a tatami mat, his face cold and indifferent as always. It was as if nothing in the world could attract his attention or warm his heart. Long Tianma and Mu Qingwu were kneeling in front of him. They'd already asked about his condition and given him some nourishing medicines. Currently, they were lost in thought. Although the Duke of Qin was only a few years older than them, Long Tianma and Mu Qingwu still held him in awe and reverence. If possible, neither of them wanted to make an enemy out of the Duke of Qin. Mu Qingwu secretly tugged at Long Tianma's sleeve. Long Tianma was about to get down to business when Han Yunshi suddenly appeared. Note to the readers, update a chapter first, then continue writing. Group 1 and 2 are full. Group 3 is 3997511923. Chapter 411. As soon as Han Yunshi arrived, Long Tianma and Mu Qingwu both rose to their feet. It had been a long time since they'd seen this woman, so they naturally missed her. Long Tianma could tell at a glance that she'd gained some weight. Disaster relief was a laborious task, but Imperial Uncle Qin was the one who brought her here. How could he allow her to suffer? Even though Long Tianma was 1,000 times unwilling, he still called out, "Imperial Aunt." Han Yunshi didn't speak, but nodded and gestured for Long Tianma to sit down. "Good luck to esteemed Wang Fei," Mu Qingwu bowed his head in greeting. "Young general, you may rise." Han Yunshi's polite tone was distant. "Thanks to esteemed Wang Fei." Mu Qingwu's attitude was the same as before. He rose to his knees and returned to Long Tianma's right. Han Yunshi sat next to Long Feiyi without asking any questions. She was very quiet. Long Tianma was about to speak about Northernly, but Han Yunxi's presence stopped him from speaking. Although he didn't like war, he still felt a bellyful of anger whenever he thought of that bastard Jun Yixia harboring designs on Han Yunxi. If he had a chance to express his opinion, he'd definitely support the Duke of Qin's actions. Even if he didn't kill Jun Yixia, he'd trap him on Fishery Island until he died. Unfortunately, the Emperor had entrusted him with this task. As the heir apparent of a nation, he had a responsibility to the people of Tianing country as well. Once war broke out, the people would suffer the most. Compared to Long Tianma, the military man Mu Qingwu was much more decisive. After hiding all the emotions in his heart, Mu Qingwu rose to his feet and got down on one knee. He cupped his fists and bowed. Your Highness Duke of Qin, Your Highness, and this general have been entrusted by the Emperor and the millions of civilians in the 3 cities bordering the three-way battlefield. We have come to invite you and General Bailey back to the imperial capital to discuss military and political matters. As soon as Mu Qingwu said this, Long Tianma came back to his senses. He felt guilty for letting Mu Qingwu speak first. He hurriedly said, Imperial Uncle Qin, Imperial Father had me prepare an 8-horse carriage to specially invite you and Imperial Aunt back. Jun Yixia has gone too far. Everyone is still waiting for you and Imperial Aunt to discuss the war in Northernly. What is there to discuss? Long Feiyi asked. To discuss battle strategy. Long Tianma quickly replied. However, Long Feiyi said, this prince has never been involved in the affairs of the imperial court, much less the military. Leave it to His Majesty to make the decision. Han Yunxi sat on one side without a word, but her heart was secretly laughing. Even she was often left speechless by Long Feiyi's words, to say nothing of the 2 men before her. Emperor Tianhui should have invited a professional lobbyist instead. Long Tianma hesitated for a long time before he spoke again. Imperial Uncle Qin, then General Bailey. Before he could finish, Long Feiyi retorted cold. Crown Prince means to say that it was your lordship who ordered the Bailey Navy to surround Fishery Island. Long Tianma wasn't at a loss for words, but his heart was stifled. That was the truth. How would General Bailey dare to move without the Duke of Qin's orders? Still, he had to deny it. No, that's not what Tianma meant. I just wanted to ask Imperial Uncle Qin for advice on how to deal with General Bailey. Your lordship has already said that I don't involve myself in military affairs. You should go back and ask your imperial father, Long Feiyi said simply as he waved a hand to send him off. Long Tianma had run into an extraordinarily large wall. Fortunately, he had a good temper and patience. If he was like his father, he'd probably flip out on the spot. Mu Qingwu, who was still kneeling on one side, had an impatient temper. Your Highness, the people at the border are innocent. Tianing's soldiers are innocent as well. We're running out of supplies and provisions. Moreover, the weather at the three-way battlefield is still cold. If we start fighting now, the casualties will be incalculable. Your Highness, please reconsider. Despite Mu Qingwu's agitation, Long Feiyi only shot him a cold glance. Young General, you should say those words to General Bailey instead. Your Highness. Mu Qingwu was starting to get angry. Your Highness, this soldier doesn't advocate sparing Jun Yixia. Killing a beast like Jun Yixia with a single blow would be letting him off too easily. This soldier only hopes that Your Highness can go back and discuss a countermeasure. They should be able to come up with a countermeasure that wouldn't release Jun Yixia without starting a war. That was his true goal in traveling with the Crown Prince. As Mu Qingwu spoke, he snuck a peek at Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi remained silent. Mu Qingwu was both agitated and furious, his chest heaving up and down. Unfortunately, Long Feiyi retorted, Your lordship doesn't involve himself in military affairs. Don't you understand? Han Yunshi counted silently on the side. Long Fei Yi had already said the same thing 3 times. He was already quite patient with these 2 men. Mu Qingguo stared blankly for a while before finally giving up. This soldier understands. It wasn't until the 2 men left that Han Yunshi spoke up. Your Highness, the young general did remind Qinxie of something just then. The 3-way battlefield is still freezing cold, so we'll be at a disadvantage if we start fighting. But Northernly might not be able to gain the upper hand. In this season, there was still a lot of snow in the north that hadn't melted yet. The weather was still cold, and it would occasionally snow in some places. Northernly mainly relied on animal husbandry and hunting. In the winter, the warhorses and other livestock could only eat the grass that was stored last year. In fact, Northernly's war supplies might not be abundant in this season. Moreover, if they started fighting at this time, it would affect a major event in Northernly, the spring hunt. Long Fei Yi looked at Han Yunshi with interest. Continue. Qinxie was just guessing. Han Yunshi wasn't being modest, but she really didn't know much about Northernly. Perhaps they had ample reserves. Then just say it casually. Long Fei Yi was very interested. Since he said so, Han Yunshi really said whatever came to mind. Your Highness, the young general has fought with Northernly several times, so he should be very familiar with Northernly's situation. The young general didn't consider that Northernly would have a shortage of provisions, so I'm sure Northernly has always been prepared. Han Yunshi hesitated for a moment before continuing, but Your Highness is certain that Northernly won't go to war. So Qinxie boldly guessed that Your Highness might have a way to tamper with Northernly's provisions. Tampering with a country's war supplies was easier said than done. Not to mention getting close to these things, even knowing the whereabouts of these things was difficult. Han Yunshi felt that she was thinking too much. She looked at Long Fei Yi, waiting for his answer. However, Long Fei Yi only patted her shoulder and said indifferently, "It's getting late, go rest." So, she guessed wrong. Han Yunshi shrugged and didn't ask any more questions. In any case, she knew that he wouldn't say anything and was deliberately whetting her appetite. Who told her to win the bet? Just wait, she'd have an answer soon enough. In any case, she knew that Long Fei Yi would go back eventually. Emperor Tianhui had urged him repeatedly, but he still hadn't moved. It was probably time for him to beg for help. When begging for help, one had to show their sincerity. Although Han Yunshi wasn't the person who understood Long Fei Yi best in the world, her guesses were always spot on. A few days later, Northernly's southern borders really did show signs of reinforcements. Emperor Tianhui grew anxious. Thus, he gave Long Fei Yi a list of memorials from the Ministry of Appointments, as well as a few recommendations from other officials. These memorials were all about filling the vacant position of South Ning Prefecture's provincial governor. Some of these memorials recommended Long Fei's side, while others recommended Emperor Tianhui's. 2 or 3 of them were from the neutral faction. Emperor Tianhui had said that the Duke of Qin had personally visited the disaster regions and understood South Ning Prefecture's situation the best. It was up to the Duke of Qin to decide who was qualified for the position. This seemed perfectly justified and proper, but anyone who understood the situation would know that Emperor Tianhui was yielding. To put it bluntly, this was already a sincere plea for the Duke of Qin to return. All of the memorials were spread out on the desk. Han Yunshi walked around in a circle and looked through them all. She recognized some of them, but didn't recognize others. She asked them one by one and familiarized herself with them before politely dividing the memorials into 3 piles, those from the Duke of Qin's faction, those from the Royalist faction, and those from the neutral faction. Your Highness, please pick one that's pleasing to the eye. Han Yunshi copied the servant's words and spoke respectfully. Even she felt like she was asking Long Fei Yi to choose a consort. Unexpectedly, Long Fei casually picked one from the royalist faction. Seeing this, Han Yunxi and Chu Shifeng both grew alarmed. "Master, you made a mistake," Chu Shifeng blurted out. But Long Fei only glanced at the name on the memorial before tossing it over. "He's the one, reported up." What did His Highness Duke of Qin mean by this? He didn't want a free advantage. Chu Shifeng stood rooted to the spot, a habit of his that made him shoot a questioning glance at Han Yunxi whenever he was at a loss. Han Yunxi burst into laughter. "Your Highness, I heard His Majesty is ill and can't be provoked. Is it really all right for you to do this?" The intelligent Han Yunxi immediately understood that no matter what Long Fei's original stance was, the person he chose would definitely surrender to him as soon as he picked them. The Duke of Qin had stayed in South Ning Prefecture for a few months and had also stayed in the prefectural governor's mansion for a long time. He had already set up quite a number of forces. Who wouldn't be afraid of the Duke of Qin's remaining power after being sent here to be the prefectural governor? Thus, even if Emperor Tianhui's men came, they'd have to surrender to the Duke of Qin. Han Yunxi finally understood as well. She looked at Long Fei and couldn't help but rejoice at the fact that she hadn't made an enemy out of him. Otherwise, it was very possible that she'd be killed without even realizing it. But there was one thing that Han Yunxi couldn't figure out. If not for the position of senior provincial official, what else was Long Fei doing all this for? After delaying for so long, it was time to go back. Chu Shifeng, send the memorial back. Just say esteemed Wang Fei isn't in a good mood, so your lordship wants to keep her company for a few more days, Long Fei instructed. Chu Shifeng didn't understand, so he could only do as he was told. Han Yunxi's heart was filled with warmth. She understood. A few days later, the Empress Dowager sent a letter to comfort Han Yunxi instead of using the carrot and stick. She also made it clear that the matter of the chastity mark was their own business and wouldn't look into it. With this proof, there was no need to worry about the Empress Dowager digging up old debts in the future. Han Yunxi knew she was completely safe. For the first time, she realized that this man could be so meticulous and perfect with his work. Finally, His Highness Duke of Qin and esteemed Wang Fei set out for the capital. The war in Northern Li, the battle on Fishery Island, and the impending marriage alliance. All of these events had been squeezed together to make Tianning's capital city lively again. Chapter 412. As soon as Long Fei and Han Yunxi returned to Tianning's capital city, Emperor Tianhui sent someone to summon Long Fei to the palace for a meeting before they'd even reached the Duke of Qin's estate. "Are you going?" Long Fei asked. Han Yunxi gave a start. She never expected Long Fei to ask such a question. She wasn't a shadow follower, and he'd never let her tag along when he went out on business. Long Fei knitted his brows at her and asked again, "Are you going?" "I'm going," Han Yunxi replied loudly. Of course she wouldn't miss out on a good show. By now, it was already dark, but there was still a group of people standing in Emperor Tianhui's imperial study. Crown Prince Long Tianma, General Mu, and his son, Right Prime Minister Su Shaoquan, the Minister of War, and the Minister of Revenue were all present. All of them were on Emperor Tianhui's side. "His Highness Duke of Qin has arrived, esteemed Wang Fei has arrived," a eunuch announced loudly. Hearing this, the crowd exchanged glances and began to whisper amongst themselves. Why had Qin Wang Fei Han Yunxi come? The emperor had summoned the Duke of Qin to discuss military affairs, so what was a woman like her doing here? After all, there were no other women in the imperial study besides court ladies. Long Tianma and Mu Qinggu both wore complicated looks on their faces, but they didn't say a word. Emperor Tianhui saw the crowd exchanging glances and whispering into each other's ears. He didn't say a word, but he had an idea of what was going on. Soon enough, Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi entered the study. The two of them bowed to Emperor Tianhui, followed by the rest of the crowd. Han Yunxi glanced at Emperor Tianhui and discovered that he'd aged quite a bit in the past few months. There were even a few strands of white hair by his temples. First, he was sick. Second, he was worried about national affairs. Third, he was worried about war. As expected, it wasn't easy being an emperor. Qin Wangfei hasn't entered the palace in ages. You should pay your respects to the Empress Dowager. Emperor Tianhui clearly wanted Han Yunxi to leave. Before Han Yunxi could speak, Long Fei-yi said, Chen Di hasn't seen the Empress Dowager for a long time. I will go with Wang Fei later. His attitude silenced the crowd. Emperor Tianhui's hands slowly clenched into fists. He'd already been waiting for a Long Fei-yi, but now his anger was unbearable. He slapped the table and rose to his feet in anger. Duke of Qin, Zhen summoned you here today to discuss important military and political matters. What right does a woman like Han Yunxi have to stand here? Everyone was frightened by Emperor Tianhui's rage, but Han Yunxi remained calm and collected. If not for Long Fei-yi's invitation, she wouldn't have come at all. Your Majesty, this subject brother thought that you summoned this subject brother into the palace for a reward. It seems that this subject brother misunderstood. Long Fei-yi's tone was light and casual, but it set off a storm in everyone's hearts. What did he mean by those words? He clearly knew that Northernly had already made preparations for war. He clearly knew why His Majesty had yielded so much and begged him to come back. How could he stand here and say such things so indifferently? Even Long Tianma and Mu Qingwu felt a chill run down their spines. It seemed like they'd finally witnessed the Duke of Qin's coldness and heartlessness today. In the silence of the room, Emperor Tianhui was so angry that he was panting for breath. It took him a long time to calm himself down. Duke of Qin, you and your wife have rendered meritorious service in disaster relief. Tomorrow morning court will award you with rewards. Zhen summoned you here overnight precisely for the sake of Northern Li's war affairs. Imperial brother, after the late emperor passed away, this subject brother didn't involve himself in military or political matters. Didn't you know that all along? Long Fei-yi's eyes flashed with disdain. This time, the room became even more silent. Even General Mu had a complicated expression on his face. Han Yunxi was puzzled as well. She assumed that Long Fei-yi had yielded after returning to the capital, but he was still insisting. Did he bring her to the imperial study today just to use her as an excuse to infuriate Emperor Tianhui? Emperor Tianhui stared fixedly at Long Fei-yi, his heart filled with rage and a sense of helplessness. He'd ascended the throne at the age of 25 and ruled over Tianning. He'd held great power at a young age without the coercion of distant relatives or the pressure of meritorious ministers or generals. He didn't even need the Grand Tutor to assist him. In other words, he'd seized all power as soon as he ascended the throne. But who would have thought that the Duke of Qin would keep him in check at his age? After the late emperor passed away, the first person he'd been on guard against was the Duke of Qin. He'd used all sorts of methods to force the Duke of Qin away from the center of government affairs, but never expected the Duke of Qin's retort today. He'd never believed that he'd already lost half of Tianning's imperial power, but now he had no choice but to face the facts. The Empress Dowager's banquet was the Duke of Qin's reminder to everyone that the struggle for the throne had long begun. He. Emperor Tianhui suddenly laughed. Zhen really is muddle-headed from illness. There's something Zhen doesn't understand. Since the Duke of Qin has come today, why don't you give Zhen an explanation? Your Majesty, please speak. Long Fei-yi was very calm. You mobilized the Bailey Navy to transport the fish. How did the Bailey Navy end up at odds with Jun Yixie? Emperor Tianhui asked seriously. Jun Xia intended to seize the fish and sell them to Tianning's disaster areas. He not only fought with your lordship over the fish eyes, but also insulted Tianning. For the sake of protecting Tianning's face, General Bailey sent out troops to surround them and display the might of the navy to intimidate Northernly. Long Fei Yi rarely spoke such high-sounding words. When he finished, he added, "As your lordship sees it, General Bailey's merits outweigh his faults. It's only right that he be rewarded." Han Yunqi listened from the sidelines. She felt like something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Besides Long Tianma and Mu Qinggu, everyone else found the situation strange as well. They couldn't figure out His Highness Duke of Qin's intentions. Still, Emperor Tianhui stroked his beard and laughed coldly in his heart. He'd finally used the last bargaining chip in his hand. Jun Xia's bullying of Han Yunqi hadn't been made public, so very few people knew about it. Emperor Tianhui himself had only gotten the news from Northern Li's secret agents. Long Fei Yi clearly didn't want the matter to be publicized, so he'd given General Bailey a perfectly justifiable reason. Just a moment ago, he'd said he didn't want to involve himself in politics, but now he was evaluating General Bailey's actions. Thus, hiding the fact that Han Yunqi had been bullied was Long Fei Yi's real condition. Emperor Tianhui's gloomy mood suddenly brightened. There was finally a breakthrough. The Duke of Qin's words are reasonable. But how long does General Bailey plan to keep up his show of force? There's already movement at the three-way battlefield. Does General Bailey have a battle plan? Emperor Tianhui's greatest fear was that the Bailey Navy wouldn't settle down at Fishery Island while Northernly fought at the three-way battlefield. If the Bailey Navy could head north to attack Northernly from the coastline and become the main force, then it would be Long Fei's forces fighting against Northernly instead of his own. Long Fei Yi had finally exposed his weakness today. If he wanted to protect Han Yunqi and his own reputation, then he'd have to pay the price. Long Fei Yi replied, "Chindi can't guess General Bailey's thoughts either. Your Majesty might as well ask him directly." Emperor Tianhui's eyes turned shrewd. "Duke of Qin, Duke of Qin. You're clearly in control of everything, but you still want to stay out of it. Now that you've exposed your weakness, Zhen won't let you off so easily." "Fine. Zhen will ask him properly," Emperor Tianhui said coldly. What was supposed to be a tense military meeting ended just like that. All of the officials were left confused, but Long Tianma stayed behind to ask, "Imperial Father, do you really want to fight this war?" Emperor Tianhui waved a hand to dismiss him without a word. The next day, Emperor Tianhui issued an imperial edict to reward the Bailey Navy for their efforts in protecting Tianning's honor. General Bailey also said that if Northernly dared to start a war at the three-way battlefield, the Bailey Navy would head north to attack Northernly's coastal defenses and force them to withdraw their troops. Emperor Tianhui rejoiced and approved the Bailey Navy's plan. Now Long Tianma and Mu Qinggu understood everything. "Qinggu, who do you think won this time? Imperial Father or Imperial Uncle Qin?" Long Tianma asked. Northernly's coastal defenses were weak, which was where the value of Tianning's navy lay. As soon as Tianning's navy moved north, Northernly would have to declare a ceasefire or transfer their troops to the east. They wouldn't lose too badly, but they wouldn't gain any advantages either. "Did His Majesty win?" Mu Qinggu said mildly. The Duke of Qin could have left Emperor Tianhui to clean up after the incident at Fishery Island, but for the sake of Han Yunqi's reputation, he'd yielded in the end. As Mu Qinggu spoke, he couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. Even when His Highness Duke of Qin gave in, no one could tell. Unless they knew the truth, how could any of the court officials see through him? But once war breaks out, won't Jun Xia benefit for nothing? Mu Qinggu couldn't accept it when he thought of this. Judging from Northern Li's actions, they'll definitely go to war. Imperial Uncle Qin can only let Jun Xia benefit like this? Long Tianma muttered to himself. Although he'd seen through the situation, he still felt regret. As soon as Han Yunxi heard the news, she rushed to Long Fei Ye's study in his quarters and stood in front of him, staring at him. Long Fei Ye calmly rolled up the annals of the 7 noble families in his hands and hid the title of the book before putting it aside. "Is something the matter?" he asked. Han Yunxi stared at him for a long time before she spoke. "Long Fei Yi, you're too black-hearted." Long Fei Yi immediately knitted his brows. No one in the world had ever dared to stand in front of him and curse him. This woman was the first. Han Yunxi didn't care about Long Fei Ye's unhappy expression. She said, "You were certain that Northernly wouldn't go to war, so you had General Bailey make that promise to Tianhui. It looked like you were giving in for me, but you were playing with Tianhui again." After returning home that night, Han Yunxi had been trying to figure out Long Fei Ye's motives. Now she finally understood. This fellow was an expert among experts. If he hadn't been so young, he would have played Emperor Tianhui to death long ago during the struggle for the throne. How could he ever sit on the dragon throne? As long as Northernly didn't go to war, the Bailey Navy would have a legitimate reason to surround Fishery Island. Seeing Han Yunxi's agitated expression, Long Fei Yi mistook her for anger and sighed softly. "Isn't your lordship doing all this for you?" Chapter 413. Long Fei Yi had appeared to yield for Han Yunxi's sake in the imperial study that night, but he'd continued to set a trap for Emperor Tianhui. Han Yunxi didn't mind that Long Fei Yi had used her, but she was shocked by his black-bellied methods. She was also happy that the matter of Fishery Island's navy had been resolved so perfectly, so she was especially agitated. Hearing Long Fei's sigh, she gave a start. She blurted out, "Your Highness, what did you say?" She'd heard everything he said clearly, but couldn't help but ask. Long Fei Yi was surprised that he'd said it himself. It was obvious that he didn't want to say it, so he didn't know what had happened just then. Their eyes met, Han Yunxi waiting while Long Fei Yi hesitated. "Your Highness." Han Yunxi called out tentatively. Long Fei Yi withdrew his gaze and began to tidy up the things on his desk. "Your Highness," just then you said. Han Yunxi trailed off, then walked around the desk. Long Fei quickly tidied up and prepared to leave when Han Yunxi immediately went to block his way. "Your Highness, what did you say just then?" she asked. "Nothing," Long Fei Yi replied mildly. "You clearly said it." Han Yunxi looked up at him, her elegant face filled with sincerity. Long Fei Yi glanced at her. "Your lordship needs to go out," he said, then circled around her to leave. Han Yunxi stopped him again and grabbed his hand with a grin. "Your Highness, just then you said you were doing all this for my sake." A smile like that made it impossible for Long Fei to leave or feel cold even if he wanted to. He could tell that she was very happy. Perhaps Han Yunxi hadn't noticed, but Long Fei Yi could tell that this woman had changed in front of him over the past few days. She was growing bolder and bolder. Although she still stared at him like a love-struck fool, she was no longer timid and humble. Han Yunxi really hadn't noticed the change in herself. She only knew that what used to be a one-sided love was now mutual affection. If she liked him, she liked him. What was the point of hiding it? It was hard to imagine that the domineering Duke of Qin would be questioned like this one day. In this relationship, who was more timid? Long Fei Ye's expression didn't change as he lectured her. "Isn't it all for your sake? If you told your lordship about Jun Xia earlier, you wouldn't be here today." "Fine," Han Yunxi let go of him, with her head bowed. Chinchia knows her wrongs. Very satisfied, Long Fei Yi turned to leave. He hadn't even reached the door when his lips quirked up into a smile. He was in a good mood. Just like that, the news of the Bailey Navy's entrapment at Fishery Island was settled. Emperor Tianhui was still keeping an eye on Northern Li's situation. Indeed, Northern Li had made many moves at the borders of the three-way alliance, but their stance was unyielding. Emperor Tianhui had never looked forward to war so much. He was waiting for Northern Li to go to war, for General Bailey to fulfill his promise and for Long Fei Yi and Northern Li to suffer heavy losses. Although he predicted that neither side would suffer heavy losses, he'd still be the ultimate victor. However, who would have thought that an entire month had passed? The Northern Dynasty's emperors had threatened Northern Li multiple times, but never really sent out their troops. Your Majesty, this is too abnormal. With the Northern Dynasty's emperor's personality, they should have sent out their troops half a month ago. Could it be that they're too afraid to act rashly because of Western Zhou's marriage alliance? Or are they afraid of the Bailey Navy? 2 days ago, I heard that Northern Li's imperial ships showed up near Fishery Island. They've never suffered losses at the hands of a navy before, so why would they be afraid? Didn't a secret agent say that the Northern Dynasty's emperors disdain the Bailey Navy? Emperor Tianhui had just recovered from his illness, but the constant chatter of his officials had left him dizzy and lightheaded. He slapped the table and raged, "General Mu, speak. Your Majesty, as this soldier sees it, there's something fishy going on. It's better to wait a few more days." General Mu was an old fox with plenty of military experience. He could faintly sense that something was amiss within Northern Li, but he wouldn't say a word. As a great general, he was just like his son. The last thing he wanted was to see war break out. Since General Mu had already said as much, Emperor Tianhui could only wait and see. Your Majesty, Western Zhou's princess is coming for the marriage alliance at the end of the month. Should the princess's dowry? The Minister of War trailed off. Everyone knew that Chu Qingge's dowry consisted of a large number of battle horses. Moreover, Chu Qingge had a team of archers under her command. According to the Chu clan's intentions, they wanted to combine the horses and archers into a team of elite soldiers under Chu Qingge's command. But at a time like this, leaving the horses to Great General Ning, the cavalry general stationed at the borders, was the most suitable choice. The Minister of War added in a low voice, "Your Majesty, the Chu clan is still a Western Zhou military family. It wouldn't make sense to get rid of someone else's dowry for no good reason." But wasn't the current situation at the three-way battlefield a perfect excuse? Western Zhou couldn't refuse even if they wanted to. Emperor Tianhui understood the Minister of War's intentions and hesitated. Seeing this, Long Tianma was about to step forward and coax him, but General Mu stopped him with a look. The Minister of War was already Long Tianma's man. Emperor Tianhui didn't know that. At a time like this, Long Tianma only needed to remain silent. After some hesitation, Emperor Tianhui agreed to the Minister of War's suggestion. When the news reached Long Fei Ye's ears, Long Fei Yi told Han Yunxi, "Chu Qingge's child hasn't even been born yet, but the fight for the throne has already begun." Han Yunxi shook her head. "This isn't a fight for the throne, but usurping the throne." Long Tianma was already secretly plotting to usurp the throne. Of course, Han Yunxi wasn't interested in such matters. She was more concerned with another matter. Now that Emperor Tianhui's illness had recovered, Gu Beiyue could leave Profound Dragon Palace. Gu Beiyue had been summoned to the palace as soon as he returned to the capital on sick leave. He'd stayed in Profound Dragon Palace the entire time without leaving for a single day. Until yesterday, he could finally leave the palace to rest for a few days. Han Yunxi missed her little thing. Many people were concerned about the emperor's illness. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Gu Beiyue had cut off all contact with the outside world as soon as he entered Profound Dragon Palace. Only those allowed and could ask about the emperor's condition. Han Yunxi couldn't contact him either, so she didn't know how Lil Thing was doing. Your Highness, Chinchilla will be going to the Gu estate this afternoon to pick up Lil Thing. Han Yunxi reported her whereabouts honestly. Just have Chu Shifeng go. Long Fei Yi didn't even look at her. Lil Thing's been with him for so long. Chinchilla needs to ask about it personally, Han Yunxi said. It must be still asleep, or else it would have come back on its own long ago, Long Fei Yi said mildly. You should at least ask about its condition. Han Yunxi didn't understand why this guy disliked Lil Thing so much. Why did he always dislike it? The poison beast won't die, don't worry, Long Fei Yi said. Then we still need to understand its condition. I wonder how its poison and blood are recovering. Han Yunxi grew serious. If not for the fact that Lil Thing's blood hadn't recovered, she wouldn't have to work so hard in the detox system to help Bailey Mingxiang create antidotes. It won't recover in just a few months. Long Fei Yi hadn't mentioned it before, but he understood the poison beast well. In any case, he refused to agree to let Han Yunxi go. Han Yunxi regretted telling him where she was going. He'd never asked her to report her whereabouts either. After some thought, she said, you should at least ask. After all, it's Gu Beiyue who's taking care of it. Actually, she'd long noticed that Long Fei Yi was prejudiced against Gu Beiyue. No, it was more accurate to say that he was prejudiced against her friendship with Gu Beiyue. Last time, she'd used Gu Beiyue to provoke Long Fei Yi into action. Han Yunxi still had a guilty conscience, so how could she dare to say anything? When she saw that Long Fei Yi didn't speak, she said, Your Highness, it's better if you let Imperial Physician Gu examine your wound. Why don't you come with Chinchilla? But Long Fei Yi simply said, Chu Shifeng, go to the Gu estate and have Gu Beiyue send Lil Thing over. Han Yunxi withered. She looked at Long Fei Yi, who'd been reading with his head bowed, and muttered to herself, You win. Soon enough, Chu Shifeng arrived with Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue looked the same as before. His complexion wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. Dressed in snow-white robes, he was quiet and gentle. Anyone who looked at him would feel like the entire world was beautiful. This official greets Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei. He bowed in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. You may rise. Long Fei Yi stood in a lofty position, his aura imposing. Imperial Physician Gu, has your body recovered? Han Yunxi asked with concern. Many thanks for esteemed Wang Fei's concern. This official has already recovered, whether Long Fei Yi was here or not. Gu Beiyue was always so polite. As he spoke, he handed over the little bamboo basket on the side. Esteemed Wang Fei, Lil Thing has recovered quite well. It wakes up every few days, and stays awake for longer and longer periods of time. But right now, it's still asleep. It should wake up again in a day or two. Han Yunxi eagerly took the basket and lifted the red cloth to see Lil Thing curled up into a furry ball. She was both happy and distressed. She gently stroked Lil Thing for a long time before picking it up and holding it in her hands, carefully examining it. Although Lil Thing hadn't fully recovered, Gu Beiyue had raised it quite a bit. It felt quite heavy in her hands. It's gotten quite heavy. You really know how to raise it, Han Yunxi said with a smile. It was all fed with esteemed Wang Fei's poison. Gu Beiyue also smiled faintly. Has it ever been unable to find me when it wakes up? Han Yunxi asked curiously. Gu Beiyue recalled, the first time it woke up, it ran back to the Duke of Qin's residence. This official originally wanted to look for it, but it quickly came back on its own. It probably couldn't find you. It's very smart. When I'm not here, it'll obediently follow you. Han Yunxi was amused. Gu Beiyue hurriedly nodded, esteemed Wang Fei knows it best. After that time, it stopped running every time it woke up. Wherever this official goes, it follows. When Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue talked about Lil Thing, it was as if they had endless things to talk about. The more they talked, the happier they became. She didn't know if Gu Beiyue was aware of Long Fei Ye's existence. In short, Han Yunxi had forgotten about Long Fei Yi. Long Fei sat on one side, his already frigid face now covered in a layer of ice. Finally, when Han Yunxi was laughing, he opened his mouth. Chapter 4:14. Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue were laughing and chatting when the frost-faced Long Fei Yi suddenly spoke up. Imperial Physician Gu, I heard that you took sick leave to return to your hometown. Gu Beiyue quickly turned and bowed. Yes. Where's your hometown? Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi grew curious as well. From what she understood, Gu Beiyue had followed his grandfather to Tianning's capital city. He'd probably grown up in the medical academy as a child. In the end, his parents had never mentioned it. It's in Longxi. This official's parents died when I was young, so I was raised by my grandfather. My ancestral home is Longxi County and I grew up in Medical City. Later on, I followed my grandfather to Tianning and have been living here ever since. This time, I came back to Longxi to recuperate from my illness and pay respects to my ancestors. Gu Beiyue seemed to know what Long Fei Yi was going to ask next. He not only answered, but explained everything clearly. Long Fei Yi had recently sent people to check the medical academy's records and Longxi County for verification. Although Long Fei Yi didn't believe him completely, he still hadn't found any evidence to prove that Gu Beiyue was lying. If he hadn't seen Gu Beiyue's skills in Medical City, he might have given up on his suspicions long ago. Long Fei Yi nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Wang Fei, you said that your lordship's wound needs to be examined again. Wang Fei. Is he called Han Yunxi? Han Yunxi didn't know how to react. Whenever Long Fei spoke to her, he'd either call her by her full name or call her by her full name. She was currently pondering Gu Beiyue's origins. His parents had died when he was young and he was a pot of medicine. How bitter must his life have been? Long Fei Yi deliberately looked over, but she didn't notice. Gu Beiyue could have answered on behalf of Han Yunxi. After all, the follow-up was his business. However, he stood there and did not say a word. Long Fei Yi stared at her for a long time before saying, Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi regained her senses. Your Highness called me. Does this prince's wound need to be examined? Although Long Fei Yi was displeased, he still patiently asked again. When Gu Beiyue saw this scene, he faintly felt that the Duke of Qin's patience with esteemed Wang Fei seemed to have improved quite a bit after not seeing each other for a while. Esteemed Wang Fei also seemed to be more at ease in front of the Duke of Qin. Follow-up. When the gauze was removed, it was confirmed that he had recovered. The follow-up visit was just an excuse that Han Yunxi used to say that she couldn't win against Long Fei Yi. Of course, of course. She hurriedly nodded and secretly gave Gu Beiyue a look, indicating for him to cooperate. Imperial Physician Gu, His Highness's wound healed faster than expected. It was basically healed last month. Just in case, take a look again. Gu Beiyue could actually accurately calculate when Long Fei Ye's wound would heal. In order to hide his medical skills, he deliberately exaggerated the healing time. He pretended to be shocked. It healed last month. That's right. Take a look again. Han Yunxi had a serious expression. Long Fei Yi didn't say anything. He moved to the side hall to let Gu Beiyue examine him. He wasn't a physician, but he knew best whether his wound had healed or not. How could Han Yunxi hide her intentions from him? He took the initiative to ask about the follow-up visit in order to change the topic. The little thing had been sent over and the follow-up visit had been completed. Shouldn't Gu Beiyue take his leave now? These three people, Oh. Each one was more shrewd than the other. Today's game was just a small trick. If they became enemies one day, what kind of schemes would they use? Gu Beiyue wasn't careless. He seriously examined Long Fei Yi and then sighed with emotion. His Highness's constitution is extraordinary. This can be considered a miracle. Didn't this miracle come from Imperial Physician Gu's hands? Long Fei Yi countered with a question. Gu Beiyue wasn't alarmed. His expression didn't change as he said modestly, I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. Long Fei Yi didn't like to argue without results, so he didn't say much. Gu Beiyue withdrew. As he wished, he said, Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, this official should also take his leave. Before Han Yunshi could speak, Long Fei Yi waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. Han Yunshi held the little thing and gestured to Gu Beiyue. Many thanks. Esteemed Wang Fei is too polite. This official will take his leave. Gu Beiyue was about to leave when the little thing in Han Yunshi's hands suddenly woke up. It was in a daze. When it opened its eyes, the first thing it saw was Gu Beiyue bowing and retreating with his head lowered. His thin, silent figure gradually retreated as if to leave for good. Lil Thing grew fearful at the sight and gave a shrill squeak. Then it flew out and threw itself into Gu Beiyue's arms. This sudden turn of events gave everyone a shock. Lil Thing. Han Yunshi blurted out. Lil Thing woke up when it heard the familiar voice. When it saw Han Yunshi, it jumped in fright and squeaked again. It had to be said that these squeaks were very piercing to the ears. Long Fei Yi was already knitting his brows, but no one cared. Lil Thing looked between Gu Beiyue and Han Yunshi and immediately understood what was going on. Its Mama Yunshi was back. The gentleman had sent it here. Han Yunshi narrowed her eyes and beckoned with her finger. Come here. Lil Thing didn't hesitate to pounce over and land on Han Yunshi's shoulder, happily rubbing against her. Mama Yunshi was finally back. It missed her so much. Han Yunshi pulled Lil Thing off her shoulder and pinched its ears, teased its cheeks, scratched its neck, and tugged at its tail. It wasn't clear whether she was caressing it or ravaging it, but she was overjoyed. Did you miss me? Were you good? Did you cause any trouble? You didn't steal anything, right? Did you eat more than usual? Lil Thing had no idea what Mama Yunshi was talking about, but it kept squeaking and rubbing against Han Yunshi's fingers like a spoiled child. Long Fei Yi arched an eyebrow as he observed Han Yunshi's affectionate gestures. He didn't even blink. Esteemed Wang Fei, I'm afraid it smelled your scent and woke up early, Gu Beiyue grinned. Probably because it smelled the poison on my body. Han Yunshi grinned as well. So these two were going to start chatting again. On one side, Chu Shifeng and Zhao Mama exchanged meaningful glances. But Gu Beiyue didn't continue the conversation. It's good that Lil Thing's awake. This official still has matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. This time, he really left. This time, Lil Thing was very quiet. It nestled in Han Yunshi's hands and watched silently until the gentleman's figure disappeared from sight. It didn't know what had gotten into it just then. Was it too sleepy, or had it learned too much about him over the past few months? Was that why he had such a desolate illusion? Sir, Lil Thing really wants to spend more time with you. After Gu Beiyue left, Long Fei Yi rose to his feet and walked towards Han Yunshi. Lil Thing was staring blankly at the door when it suddenly caught a whiff of a familiar scent. It was so familiar, but it couldn't remember what it was. It sniffed and slowly turned its head, only to see Papa Long's 5 fingers rushing towards its face. A familiar scent meant danger. Its soft fur stood on end as Lil Thing tried to flee, but it was too late. Long Fei Yi grabbed it by the tail and lifted it up. Lil Thing was too scared to move or make a sound. Its head and limbs hung obediently in the air, but its eyes kept darting towards Han Yunxi for help. Lil Thing hadn't fully recovered yet, so Han Yunxi was worried that Long Fei Yi would toss it out again. She was about to take Lil Thing back when Long Fei Yi remarked, "It really has gotten heavier." This guy didn't toss Lil Thing away. Han Yunxi nodded. Imperial physician Gu knows how to take care of it. Long Fei Yi wanted to say more, but fell silent for a long time. In the end, he gave Lil Thing back to Han Yunxi and said, "It's time to reduce its diet. It won't be able to run if it's too fat." Han Yunxi burst into laughter, but Lil Thing was so moved that it wanted to cry. It had no idea what Papa Long had said, but rejoiced at the fact that it hadn't been tossed out of the window in Papa Long's hands. It felt like Papa Long had changed for the better. After Han Yunxi took Lil Thing out, Long Fei Yi asked Chu Shifeng, "What's there to talk about with a mouse?" Chu Shifeng could tell that His Highness had wanted to talk to esteemed Wang Fei about Lil Thing too, but he hadn't. "Master, that's a squirrel, not a mouse," Chu Shifeng could only reply. Long Fei only gave him a cold glance, but didn't ask any questions. Instead, he changed the subject. "Have you made arrangements?" "According to your Highness's orders, everything's been taken care of." "Tang Li's already gone to stand guard," Chu Shifeng replied. Mute Granny had arrived at the capital after them and was placed in the solitary enclosure. Tang Li had stood guard at the hidden pavilion for a long time, but the mysterious black-robed man never showed up again. "Your Highness, could that black-robed man have already died?" "He was just holding on, or perhaps he took some sort of miracle medicine to preserve his heart," Chu Shifeng guessed. "Your lordship is more interested in how he knew Mute Granny was in my hands," Long Fei Yi said. Mute Granny was the Mu clan's top secret. Mu Yingdong would never reveal her existence to outsiders. Besides him, the only other person who knew was Gu. But that man couldn't have known Mute Granny was still alive. Chu Shifeng had handled the matter flawlessly. Moreover, with Gu's personality, he would have told Han Yunxi long ago if he knew Mute Granny was fine. Long Fei Yi pondered the question for a long time, but couldn't figure out where the problem lay. "Your Highness, this subordinate's already investigated. Gu Qisha hasn't returned to Medicine Ghost Valley yet. His whereabouts are unknown," Chu Shifeng reminded him in a low voice. Chu Shifeng felt that hiding Mute Granny from esteemed Wang Fei was a dangerous thing. If one day the secret was exposed, even His Highness wouldn't be able to explain himself. Moreover, His Highness probably didn't want to explain himself either. Long Fei Yi pinched the bridge of his nose and intoned, "Tell Tang Li to keep a close eye on the man." Currently, Gu Qishao was finally leaving the Mu clan's medicine storehouse after staying for so long. That's right, he and Mu Ling had found the panoptic red lotus. Although it wasn't the top treasure in the Mu clan storehouse, it was still in the top 10. Mu Ling didn't even blink as she stuffed it into Gu's hands. "Chi brother, take care of it." Chapter 4:15. Mu Lingner had already ground the panoptic red lotus into a convenient powder and placed it in a small porcelain bottle. Mu Lingner had suffered so much to find this thing, but Gu took it for granted and didn't show any gratitude. He really didn't have any conscience. However, Mu Lingner wanted him to be this impolite. If he said thanks, she would feel distant. Love was nothing more than being willing to do it. "Chi brother, we only have the bear chuan left. Let's go steal it from the 100 Poisons sect." Mu Lingner's big watery eyes looked shifty. After a few months of torment, she had lost a lot of weight, but her spirit was very good. Steal? Would this young master do such a thing? Gu was very disdainful. Chi brother, do you have a good plan? Mu Ling'er laughed even more mischievously. Find Juni Xia. Gu said very casually. The enemy of a friend was his enemy, and the enemy of an enemy was his friend. Juni Xia was Han Yunxi's enemy, so Juni Xia was also his enemy. However, Juni Xia was also Long Fei Ye's enemy, so Juni Xia was also his friend. Although he also looked down on Juni Xia, in summary, he and Juni Xia could be considered as both enemies and friends. He didn't know if Han Yunxi would despise Gu if she knew his convoluted theory. In short, the moment Gu knew that the bear Chuan was in Juni Xia's hands, he planned his plan. With the medicine in hand, it would be easy to trick Long Fei Yi. He could give the opportunity to trick Long Fei Yi to Juni Xia, but the condition was that he wanted the bear Chuan. Are we going to Northernly? Mu Ling'er asked hurriedly. She didn't know about Gu's dark thoughts. She only cared about where to go with Qi brother. Gu rubbed his chin. He and Mu Ling had been hiding in the Mu family's medicinal herb storehouse for a period of time. It could be said that they were completely oblivious to the outside world and were only focused on finding the Mi Tianhong. He did not know that Juni Xia was trapped on Fishery Island, nor did he know the real reason why Juni Xia was trapped on Fishery Island. He thought that if Juni Xia was not at the 100 Poison sect, then he must be in the capital of Northernly. After putting away the panoptic red lotus, Gu said, "Let's go and have a drink before asking around." Mu Ling'er was overjoyed. "All right, let's get drunk." As soon as they left the Mu clan's medicinal herb storehouse, Gu heard the news that Northernly's Duke of Kong had been besieged by Tianning's Duke of Qin on Fishery Island. The two countries were on the verge of war. Mu Ling'er was so drunk that she fell asleep on the dining table. Gu leaned against the window and rubbed his chin, completely sober. "Is the Long Fei Yi really going to war just to steal the fish?" he muttered to himself. "Master, I heard that Tianning's entire navy went over with thousands of archers." Northernly's imperial clan even hired numerous martial arts experts in secret, but none of them managed to save the fish, an attendant reported in a low voice. "What good will it do the Long Fei Yi if the two countries go to war?" Gu had never cared about the affairs of the imperial court, but he could tell that Long Fei Ye's provocation of Northernly didn't make sense. "Master, why don't this subordinate go ask around again?" the attendant asked. "Let's go to Northernly's capital and get some information," Gu said, a shrewd look in his eyes. "Could it be that there's some sort of treasure on Fishery Island?" "Master, why don't you go there yourself?" the attendant asked cautiously. Gu rolled his eyes at him. "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. Do you understand?" Cooperating with Juni Xia was like asking a tiger for its skin. He had to be careful with every step. If he didn't get a clear picture of the situation, how the hell was he supposed to cooperate with him? The attendant didn't dare ask any more questions, but left with his tail between his legs. "Ayaya," Gu sighed softly. Those who didn't know him would be captivated by the sight of such a beautiful man sighing. Those who knew him would feel their hair stand on end. Those devilish eyes of his were clearly plotting something again. He had to figure out the situation before acting. Long Fei Yi had trapped Juni Xia. For him, this was the perfect opportunity to negotiate with Juni Xia. Gu sat on the windowsill with his arms resting on his knees. He looked casual and carefree. His red robe was like fire, and his hair was as black as ink. Under the moonlight, his face alone was as beautiful as a celestial being. Mu Ling'er had started to murmur beside him. "Qi brother. Qi brother, let's stay together forever, okay?" Unfortunately, Gu turned a deaf ear to her. He looked at the bright moon in the sky with a wicked smile on his face. Gu was waiting for news. On Fishery Island, Juni Xia was feeling melancholy. He had been waiting for Northern Li's imperial clan to rescue him this entire time, but there was still no news after a month. He was certain that the Northern Dynasty's emperors would save him and even send troops to threaten Tianning so that Emperor Tianhui would put pressure on Long Fei Yi. But the Ning navy hadn't moved a muscle yet. Even if Tianning's navy was strong, the Northern Dynasty's emperors wouldn't be intimidated by it. With the Northern Dynasty's emperor's temperament, they'd definitely start a war. He had no idea what was going on outside. Days like these were truly unbearable. There wasn't much fresh water and rations left on the island. Where was he supposed to find more if he kept waiting? Once again, it was the dead of night when the stars filled the sky. Zhu Nixia was lying on his back in a coconut tree, staring blankly at the stars. Did something happen to the Northernly army? There was only one reason that could stop the Northernly Emperor's bellicose heart. Zhu Nixia didn't think too deeply about the problem. There was no point in thinking about it while he was trapped here. He took out a porcelain bottle and fiddled with it. This bottle contained the blood he'd collected from the ice that day. In these boring days, all he could do was ponder over this bottle of blood. This blood contained poison that was extremely complex and strange. The blood contained a slow-acting poison. These slow-acting poisons were not fatal, but the poison formed when they were mixed together was fatal. Judging from this blood, Bailey Mingxiang had been poisoned with countless slow-acting poisons. With Zhu Nixia's keen senses, he quickly realized that Bailey Mingxiang had been used to cultivate poison blood. This method was very similar to his own method of cultivating poison humans, but it wasn't completely the same. Another possibility he thought of was to cultivate poison goo humans that couldn't be killed, but a strange discovery made him reject that idea. After careful consideration, he realized that this wasn't human blood at all, but fish blood. That day, he clearly saw that Bailey Mingxiang and General Bailey's hands were bleeding. Could it be that he'd collected the wrong blood? Their blood was somewhere else, and the blood he'd collected was from a fish. But that day, he hadn't seen any blood on the surrounding ice. Moreover, how could the fish in the illusory lake be so heavily poisoned? That day, he'd checked the lake water. Compared to waiting for someone to rescue him, Zhu Nixia was more concerned about this strange bottle of poison blood. He was very obsessed with poisons. If he didn't figure it out, he wouldn't be able to sleep. Moreover, this poison blood might be the secret of the Long Fei Yi. As he thought about it, he suddenly flipped over and fell heavily to the ground. The poison in his shoulder was acting up again. He lay motionless in the sand with his hand on his shoulder. The veins on the back of his hand were all bulging. It was a terrifying sight. The poison in his shoulder was acting up more and more frequently, and it was more and more uncomfortable each time. Rheumatic pain was the most torturous, but this pain was 100 times more uncomfortable than rheumatic pain. After a full hour of pain, Zhu Nixia was finally able to move. He sat up, his hand still firmly pressed against his shoulder. Han Yunxi. He gritted his teeth, practically squeezing the name out from between his teeth. It was clear to see how much hatred he felt. After living for more than 20 years, this was the first time he'd remembered a woman's name so clearly. It was as if it had been branded into his heart. He probably wouldn't forget it for the rest of his life. Han Yunxi, you mustn't fall into this prince's hands. Far away in Tianning, Han Yunxi was sleeping until the middle of the night when she suddenly woke up with a cold shiver. There was still more than a month until Bailey Mingxiang's beauty's blood was completed. She hadn't gone out much during this time, so she was making the best use of her time to concoct the antidote. What was worth being happy about was that she'd already decided on the initial steps of the antidote. Her experiments had all gone smoothly. Of course, she was using the poisoned blood she'd cultivated by imitating Bailey Mingxiang's poison. In order to determine if the antidote was effective, she'd have to test it on Bailey Mingxiang's true blood. Since she couldn't sleep after waking up, Han Yunxi simply got out of bed. She glanced outside the window and saw that the lights in Long Fei Ye's study were still on. "You're awake. Or still awake." She put on her clothes and was about to go downstairs when Su Xiaoyu suddenly came upstairs. "Mistress, why are you awake?" Su Xiaoyu stood in the staircase, looking up at her. Her young and tender face was filled with drowsiness. "Why aren't you asleep either?" Han Yunxi asked with concern. Su Xiaoyu silently lowered her head. Han Yunxi was a little angry. "Didn't I tell you before that you didn't need to stand guard like this? The weather's still cold, so why are you doing this?" Leisurely Cloud Pavilion didn't have a rule of servants standing guard at night. After Su Xiaoyu came, she insisted on standing guard at the staircase. After Han Yunxi came back from the disaster area, she thought that the little girl had changed her bad habits. Who knew that she'd bump into her again tonight? Seeing Han Yunxi coming down, Su Xiaoyu immediately moved aside and lowered her head like an innocent child. Han Yunxi glanced at her. She wasn't as soft-hearted as before. Although she loved this child dearly, she shouldn't challenge her patience like this. A servant girl who came to her leisurely Cloud Pavilion and didn't listen to her repeatedly. How could she stay for long? Could she still be used? As soon as she arrived downstairs, she coldly said, "Zhao Mama." Zhao Mama was sleeping in the room next to the study. She woke up from her dream and hurriedly came out. When she saw Su Xiaoyu, she knew what was going on. "Discipline her well. If there's a next time, send her out," Han Yunxi mercilessly instructed. Su Xiaoyu immediately fell to her knees, her small frame trembling. She didn't dare to make a sound. "This servant understands," Zhao Mama replied calmly. She thought to herself, this is exactly how esteemed Wang Fei should teach Su Xiaoyu a lesson. Otherwise, who knows what she'll become in the future. Han Yunxi walked out the door and realized that it was almost daybreak. Zhao Mama hurried after her and wrapped her in a cloak. "Esteemed Wang Fei, why did you suddenly wake up?" Zhao Mama asked in a low voice. "When did His Highness come back last night?" Han Yunxi asked. Zhao Mama knew the answer on purpose, but didn't say it out loud. This servant isn't sure either. Did His Highness come back last night? Han Yunxi was too lazy to pay her any more attention. She didn't leave the courtyard, but sat down on the swing instead. Northernly still hadn't gone to war, and Chuchinga's marriage alliance was imminent. She figured that the next few days would be more peaceful. She had to hurry up and deal with the beauty's blood. Because of it, her analysis of the perplexing butterfly illusion had been delayed. Seeing that esteemed Wang Fei didn't speak, Zhao Mama kept her company in silence. Su Xiaoyu had long raised her head from her room to stare at Han Yunxi from a distance. A sinister look flashed past her dark eyes that didn't suit her age. Chuchinga's marriage alliance is imminent, and Big Brother's almost here. Looks like I'll have to find out something to give Big Brother an explanation. Chapter 4:16. At the break of dawn, the sky was dark and everything seemed hazy. Han Yunxi was no longer sleepy. She sat on the swing and swayed from side to side, thinking about the antidote for Bailey Mingxiang. Zhao Mama busied herself with preparing tea and snacks. Esteemed Wang Fei didn't have the habit of drinking tea early in the morning, but ever since she came back from the disaster area, she was like His Highness Duke of Qin. She had to drink tea every day when she woke up. However, she liked tea and snacks, while the Duke of Qin basically didn't eat them. Han Yunxi didn't let her get up, and Zhao Mama didn't have time to teach her a lesson. Su Xiaoyu remained kneeling in the room. It wasn't until dawn when Han Yunxi returned to her room to change clothes and was about to go out that she remembered Su Xiaoyu. Seeing the little girl's pitiful appearance, a trace of helplessness flashed through Han Yunxi's eyes. She didn't say anything and gave Zhao Mama a look before going upstairs. Before leaving, Han Yunxi bumped into Zhao Mama and Su Xiaoyu in the courtyard, cleaning up the tea table together. If it was in the past, Su Xiaoyu would definitely run over and say that she wanted to go out with her. Today, she was really obedient. She lowered her head and silently cleaned up, not daring to make a sound. Han Yunxi didn't say anything and went out by herself. Su Xiaoyu looked at her back and then looked at the teacup in her hand. A cold smile flashed through her eyes. It was clear that she had a scheme in mind. She's gone. Why are you still looking? Zhao Mama pinched her. It seemed like she used a lot of force, but it didn't hurt at all. Su Xiaoyu looked pitifully at Zhao Mama and said in a low voice, "Yu'er knows her wrongs." "Heh heh, you're really something, little girl." Zhao Mama sneered, "I haven't taught you a lesson yet and you already know your wrongs. Do you think I'll let you off if you say that?" Su Xiaoyu twisted the linen cloth in her hand and muttered, "Then what do you want?" Zhao Mama immediately grabbed her ear and forced her to look up. "Stupid girl, you still dare to talk back. It seems esteemed Wang Fei was right. It's time to teach you a lesson." Su Xiaoyu pouted and didn't say anything. Most of the time, she was showing her true nature. She didn't know how to say nice things and often talked back. However, she had a good sense of propriety when it came to being spoiled and arrogant. Even a shrewd court lady like Zhao Mama didn't see anything strange. After all, Su Xiaoyu had already passed Chu Shifeng's test. She was also such a young child, so Zhao Mama had never been on guard against her. "Are you not convinced?" Granny Zhao asked. "In the future, I will never guard that place again," Su Xiaoyu said, feeling wronged. "Hee, you don't have to say anything. From tonight onwards, you will sleep with me." Granny Zhao was still very resourceful. Su Xiaoyu glanced at her, then drooped her head in defeat. Granny Zhao was very satisfied and urged, "Hurry up and tidy up." Su Xiaoyu picked up the heavy kettle. A sly smile flitted across her lips, and she suddenly threw the kettle on the ground. She quickly jumped out of the way. Frightened, Zhao Mama dodged to the side. Fortunately, there wasn't much water left in the kettle and it was already cold. Otherwise, it would be hard to say what would happen if the hot water splashed onto them. "You still haven't recovered your senses." Zhao Mama grew angry. Su Xiaoyu patted her chest with a face full of fear. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Thank goodness esteemed Wang Fei wasn't here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to pay for it even if you had 10 lives. Zhao Mama said unhappily. "Zhao Mama, this thing is too dangerous. Esteemed Wang Fei uses it to make tea every day. What if?" Su Xiaoyu trailed off. "Paw! Shut your crow's beak." Zhao Mama glared at her. But as she looked at the broken pieces and water on the ground, she began to seriously consider the problem. Esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness both drank kung fu tea. The teacups were very small and needed to be constantly filled with water, so they had to ensure a constant supply of hot water. There was a mini stove on His Highness's tea table in His Highness's courtyard, and there was a dedicated attendant to boil the water. There was no need to prepare such a heavy kettle, but esteemed Wang Fei wouldn't be so convenient. Seeing that Zhao Mama didn't speak, Su Xiaoyu whispered, "Zhao Mama, I saw a small stove at His Highness's place before. Isn't that convenient? Why don't we have esteemed Wang Fei ask for one from His Highness?" Zhao Mama laughed when she heard this. "Do we need to ask His Highness for such a thing? We'll just have Steward Luo find one later." Su Xiaoyu was overjoyed. "That's much more convenient. I'll be in charge of boiling the water in the future." The seeds of a conspiracy had been planted, but Han Yunxi was completely unaware. In her heart, she could be completely at ease living in the Duke of Qin's residence. Especially after Long Fei Yi strengthened the security, even Gu couldn't enter. At this time, Han Yunxi was already at the Bailey Army estate. There was still more than a month before the beauty's blood was ready. Bailey Mingxiang's health was deteriorating day by day, and she couldn't get up from her bed 3 days ago. "How much poison do you have left?" Han Yunxi asked indifferently. "Exactly 15 servings. Take one every 2 or 3 days, and it'll be over." Bailey Mingxiang's lips were pale, and her face was bloodless. However, there was no aura of death around her, because her eyes were tranquil. It wasn't that she had seen through pain and death, but that she had seen hope. The woman sitting in front of her at this moment was her hope. Han Yunxi nodded. She activated the detoxification system to examine her body, and at the same time, to take her pulse. Bailey Mingxiang was very quiet. She had completely forgotten about her own body. She stared blankly at Han Yunxi's slender fingers, and the scenes on Yuzhou Island unconsciously surfaced in her mind. That trip had actually been worth it. She had seen His Highness Duke of Qin's happy face, she had seen His Highness Duke of Qin's furious face, and she had even seen him kiss someone. She wanted to know everything about him, no matter how small or insignificant it was, as long as it had something to do with him, let alone something as big as this. She always felt that the more she knew about him, the closer she would be to him. Han Yunxi was very focused. After a long time, she said seriously, 13 days. The beauty's blood will be ready in the night of the 13th day. Unexpectedly, Bailey Mingxiang wasn't listening to such an important matter. She was still immersed in her own world. Han Yunxi looked up and couldn't help but frown. "Mingxiang." "Ah." Bailey Mingxiang finally came back to her senses. Han Yunxi was defeated. "Do you know what I just said?" Bailey Mingxiang was a little embarrassed. "I didn't hear you clearly." "It's very likely that you only have 13 days left to live," Han Yunxi said with a serious expression. Bailey Mingxiang smiled. "Esteemed Wang Fei said that she would save me, so she will definitely save me. 13 days will be the end of Mingxiang's suffering." Han Yunxi finally let go of her hand and stood up. "You trust me that much?" Bailey Mingxiang looked at Han Yunxi with a sweet smile. "Emin. Why?" "I still haven't made the antidote," Han Yunxi asked curiously. Bailey Mingxiang had too many reasons, but she only said one. "Because His Highness's taste can't be wrong. I only found out today that you have a sweet mouth." Han Yunxi smiled. As a doctor, what she needed most was the trust of her patients. She sat down and seriously explained her efforts in the past 6 months to Bailey Mingxiang. Although the process was very responsible, it was mainly about 2 things. The first was to simulate the poison in Bailey Mingxiang's body. The second was to find the antidote for this poison. This was a simulation experiment. The simulated poison was different from the poison in Bailey Mingxiang's body, but the difference wouldn't be too big. Now, there were only 13 days left to cultivate the beauty's blood. In other words, Bailey Mingxiang's blood was now stable and wouldn't change much. She could now take Bailey Mingxiang's blood and put it into the detoxification system to cultivate it. Bailey Mingxiang still needed 13 days to cultivate the beauty's blood, but her detoxification system only needed half a day to 1 day to add the remaining 10 poisons and cultivate the real beauty's blood. When the time came, Han Yunxi only needed to use the simulated antidote to try to detoxify the poison. She only needed to make some minor adjustments to the prescription and there wouldn't be any problems. Although Bailey Mingxiang couldn't hear him clearly, she still understood a bit of what he'd said. "Esteemed Wang Fei, Then why didn't you wait until now to take the blood and find the antidote? Doing those simulations seems superfluous. Bailey Mingxiang asked curiously. Taking the blood and finding the antidote now will only take 10 days. I don't have the ability to make the antidote. Han Yunqi did the simulations to save time. She thought that the simulated antidote and the real antidote would only differ by 1 or 2 ingredients. 10 days was enough for her to find the difference. Bailey Mingxiang didn't really understand, but she still nodded. She got up and wanted to get off the bed. Lie down. You don't need to get off the bed to take the blood. Han Yunqi stopped her. Esteemed Wang Fei, Mingxiang has something that needs to be done. Bailey Mingxiang said with a smile. Han Yunqi thought that she wanted to go to the bathroom, so she quickly helped her up. Who would have thought that once Bailey Mingxiang got off the bed, she would immediately kneel down. Esteemed Wang Fei, Mingxiang promises that as long as I can keep my life, I will never marry and will serve you. Han Yunqi was scared and quickly went to help her up. Don't be like this. I already said that I saved you because I didn't want to offend anyone. After all, most of the poison you took was given by me. Esteemed Wang Fei, even if you didn't give him the poison, His Highness would have found it from somewhere else. It's the same. Bailey Mingxiang insisted on not getting up. Han Yunqi felt very helpless. Because of her profession, she had seen too many patients who were grateful at first and made all kinds of promises, but after being cured, they forgot what they said. This wasn't being ungrateful, but when people were sick, they only had one thought in their mind. As long as they were cured, they were willing to pay any price. All right, I'll promise you. Hurry and get up. Han Yunqi was only perfunctory. She knew that no matter what she said now, Bailey Mingxiang wouldn't listen to her. In any case, once she cured the poison and gave Bailey Mingxiang a normal life, she would naturally want to live a good life, marry, and have children. As for serving her for a lifetime, she could just laugh it off. Han Yunqi took Bailey Mingxiang's blood and put it in a small porcelain bottle that she had prepared beforehand. Then, she put it into the detoxification system through the medical kit. Although the detoxification system's process of scanning a person's body for toxins and putting poisonous blood in for testing were two different processes, the toxins were the same. Therefore, this time's test should be very easy for the detoxification system. However, Han Yunqi felt dizzy the entire way back. She even fell asleep as soon as she reached Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. When she woke up, she discovered something very strange. Bailey Mingxiang's blood wasn't human blood, but a type of blood that was very similar to fish blood. The final answer that the detoxification system gave her was, mermaid's blood. Han Yunqi was stunned. She didn't expect the Bailey family to be mermaids. She muttered to herself, no wonder. No wonder. General Bailey doesn't have any experience at all, but he was able to form such a strong navy. Did Long Feiyi know about this? Han Yunqi ignored her exhaustion and immediately went to find Long Feiyi. Chapter 4:17. Mermaids had the tail of a fish and the body of a human. They were known as the spiritual beings of the mermaids and were a special race between humans and fish. Mermaids produced silk that wouldn't get wet in water. Their tears would turn into pearls, making them extremely precious. Han Yunqi had learned of the existence of mermaids from myths and legends. Mermaids usually lived in the sea, but they also lived in large lakes and rivers. They had high standards for water quality. But from what Han Yunqi understood, mermaids had the tail of a fish and the body of a human. They had to take medicine to leave the water, and they couldn't stay for long. But the Bailey clan was no different from humans. Moreover, they lived on land for a long time. What was going on? Did Long Feiyi know about this? Did Tianning's previous emperor, who'd ordered the formation of a navy, know about this? Using mermaids to form a navy was a heaven-defying act. After all, the sea was the mermaids' territory. No powerful navy could contend against them. By the time Han Yunxi arrived, Long Feiyi had put away the annals of the 7 noble families in his hands. Actually, Han Yunxi had long noticed the thick ancient book in Long Feiyi's hands. Although she didn't know what it was, she recognized its appearance. She remembered that Long Feiyi had been flipping through this book since he was in South Ning Prefecture. Seeing him so focused on the book, she asked, "What book is this?" Chu Shifeng jumped in fright at her words. Fortunately, Han Yunxi hadn't noticed, or else she would have noticed something amiss. Chu Shifeng was Long Feiyi's personal bodyguard. He was supposed to be calm and steady, not flustered like this. Normally, he was calm and steady, but he couldn't keep his cool in front of esteemed Wang Fei. Long Feiyi was unperturbed. "Urgent business?" he asked mildly. His 2 simple words avoided Han Yunxi's suspicions. Han Yunxi really had come in a hurry, so she didn't ask about the book. Instead, she asked directly, "Did you know that the Bailey clan is a mermaid clan?" This time, Long Feiyi could no longer remain calm. His hand on the table clearly stiffened. How did this woman know about such a confidential matter? He was certain that Bailey Mingxiang didn't have the guts to tell her. Seeing Long Feiyi's expression, Han Yunxi immediately understood. "You already knew. How did you find out?" Long Feiyi quickly regained his composure. "Bailey Mingxiang's blood is very special. I analyzed it for a whole night before I could confirm that it was that." Han Yunxi answered honestly. "You can even analyze this?" Long Feiyi was very surprised. Without the detoxification system, Han Yunxi couldn't analyze it. She could only see that Bailey Mingxiang's blood was strange, but she couldn't be sure that it was mermaid blood. However, the detoxification system had recorded it. "Your Highness, it's because the Bailey clan is a mermaid clan that you set up a navy in Tianning long ago, right?" Han Yunxi asked seriously. When Bailey Mingxiang started taking poison, Long Feiyi was still very young. Thus, the one who used Bailey Mingxiang to cultivate Beauty's blood couldn't have been Long Feiyi, but someone else. In other words, the Bailey clan had been loyal to Long Feiyi's side from the start. They hadn't been subdued by Long Feiyi after forming a navy. Yes. Long Feiyi didn't deny that the Bailey clan was his mother's first move in Tianning. Him becoming Grand Concubine Yi's son was her second move. Your Tang clan's ambitions are huge. Han Yunxi couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It looked like the Tang clan had been scheming for the world since Tianning's previous emperor's reign. Han Yunxi had no idea that the Tang clan was also loyal to Long Feiyi. She simply equated the power behind Long Feiyi to the Tang clan and assumed that the Bailey Navy was a path paved for Long Feiyi by the Tang clan. She couldn't be blamed for this. After all, Long Feiyi had told her personally that his parents were both members of the Tang clan. This was a huge misunderstanding. A complicated look flitted past Long Feiyi's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He broke into a rare chuckle. "Is your lordship's ambitions big as well?" Han Yunxi felt that his words were strange. Wasn't this guy the Tang clan's representative? She recalled the first time she'd met Aunt Ru. Hadn't the woman only criticized her because she was worried that a femme fatale like her would delay Long Feiyi's progress? Ruin their Tang clan's plans. Your Highness's ambitions aren't big. Perhaps the person sitting here today wouldn't be your Highness, but Tang Li instead, Han Yunxi teased. It didn't matter if it was a lie or a misunderstanding. In any case, Han Yunxi had misunderstood. Chu Shifeng grew uneasy at this, but Long Feiyi had no intention of explaining himself. Instead, he asked, "The beauty's blood should be ready soon, right?" Your Highness only cares about the beauty's blood and not the beauties. Han Yunshi was still joking. Of course, the beauties were referring to Bailey Mingxiang. Long Feiyi asked back seriously, you want your lordship to care? The two of them spoke ambiguously. This concern was not a concern for the other party, but there was clearly a hidden meaning behind their words. In the end, Han Yunshi grew serious. Your Highness, Bailey Mingxiang has worked hard even if she didn't have any meritorious service. It wasn't easy for her to endure hardships since she was young. Although Han Yunshi had always claimed that she'd saved Bailey Mingxiang because she didn't want to harm the heavens with her poisons, she both pitied and admired Bailey Mingxiang. At the very least, she'd never heard Bailey Mingxiang complain about anything in her interactions with Bailey Mingxiang. When Long Feiyi didn't speak, Han Yunshi added, Your Highness, if such a good girl dies like this, it'll be Your Highness's loss. Anyone who wasn't in the know might assume that Bailey Mingxiang had some sort of relationship with Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi only wanted the beauty's blood. He didn't care about anything else. Forced by Han Yunshi, he could only ask mildly, can't you save her? Has Your Highness never cared whether the antidote was successfully concocted? Han Yunshi pursued. Even if it wasn't Bailey Mingxiang today, if it were any of Long Feiyi's subordinates, be it a man or a woman, Han Yunshi would have the same thought. Wasn't Long Fei being too heartless and cruel with his indifference? Long Feiyi had such an emotionless and cold personality. He was annoyed by Han Yunshi's relentless questioning. He said unhappily, it's not your business. Why should your lordship care so much? Han Yunshi was speechless. Long Feiyi's words sounded so sweet, as if he was trying to curry favor with her. But his tone was serious and unhappy. Han Yunshi stood rooted to the spot, unsure of how to reply. Chu Shifeng's expression was one of disbelief. Who said His Highness Duke of Qin didn't know how to sweet-talk, be romantic, or confess? This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Your Highness Duke of Qin, are you sure you're not doing this on purpose? Qin Wanru thought to herself. Han Yunshi was a little embarrassed by his sweet words, but Long Feiyi was full of himself. Fine, he was just being straightforward. Perhaps he didn't know how sweet his words sounded. He arched a brow at Han Yunshi and said, just pretend you don't know about the mermaid clan. Don't mention it to the Bailey clan either. Understood, Han Yunshi knew what to do. Just like that, the two of them forgot about Bailey Mingxiang. Han Yunshi asked curiously, Your Highness, how can the mermaid clan stay on the water for so long? The Bailey clan is a branch of the mermaid clan. They're no different from normal people on land, but they show their mermaid characteristics in the water, Long Feiyi explained. Han Yunshi nodded. She didn't find it strange. Cloud Realm continent had plenty of strange people and strange things to begin with. She thought that the Bailey Navy would definitely become Long Feiyi's most powerful military force. Mermaids were not only the rulers of the seas, but the masters of the rivers and lakes as well. After Han Yunshi left, Long Feiyi took out the annals of the 7 noble families again and flipped to a random page. The yellowed page was empty except for 2 large characters, Bailey. Long Feiyi flipped to the next page and found a detailed introduction of the Bailey clan. The Bailey clan was one of the 7 noble families of the Great Qin Empire and once controlled the Great Qin Navy. They controlled all of Cloud Realm continent's water systems. Of course, that was all in the past and history. Even the annals of the 7 noble families had no record of the Bailey clan being the mermaid clan. It was a secret that the Bailey clan never told outsiders. Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei is too, Chu Shifeng didn't know what to say. Even the other 6 noble families didn't know that the Bailey clan was the mermaid clan. How did esteemed Wang Fei find out? Actually, Chu Shifeng was only trying to persuade him otherwise. Some things couldn't be hidden from esteemed Wang Fei. His Highness had always been a decisive and ruthless man. He could pick up and let go, win and lose. What couldn't he take? Even if esteemed Wang Fei found out the truth, so what? Esteemed Wang Fei had her own choices, didn't she? Chu Shifeng wanted to coax him further, but Long Fei changed the topic. How's the situation in Northernly? There's still a lot of activity at the three-way battlefield, but everything at the horse farms is going according to your Highness's orders. The Northern Dynasty's emperors are only putting on a show. They won't dare to do anything, Chu Shifeng replied honestly. Emperor Tianhui was hoping for the stars and the moon, hoping that Northernly would go to war. Unfortunately, the three-way battlefield hadn't made any real moves despite the ruckus. Due to the terrain of the three-way battlefield, Emperor Tianhui would have ordered Great General Ning to move out first. For now, Emperor Tianhui could only wait patiently. When will Chu Qingge arrive? Long Fei asked next. The bridal procession has already reached Longxi Prefecture. There'll be another 10 or so days before they reach the capital, Chu Shifeng replied. Long Fei nodded and instructed, remember to send His Majesty a big gift on the day of the wedding. Chu Shifeng smiled and nodded. This subordinate understands. Long Fei picked up the annals of the 7 noble families to continue reading. Actually, he didn't care about Tianning's political struggles at all. Over the past few years, he'd set up a trap in Tianning's court to hide the sky with one hand. To him, it was only a matter of whether he wanted to or not. To him, the matters of the 7 noble families were more important. Han Yunxi had no idea about any of this. After figuring out the situation with the Bailey clan, she set her mind at ease and continued her experiments. The blood she'd extracted was already an embryonic form of Beauty's blood, so the detox system could mix the remaining toxins into Bailey Mingxiang's blood to create Beauty's blood. Less than half a day later, the detox system gave her a small bottle of precious Beauty's blood. More accurately speaking, it was called Quasi-Beauty's blood. Chapter 418. After all, it was raised by the detoxification system and could not be 100% identical to Bailey Mingxiang's blood. Otherwise, Han Yunxi could help Bailey Mingxiang detoxify the poison right now and not let her continue to raise the blood. The Quasi-Beauty's blood was placed on a small white porcelain plate, making it look especially bright red. Han Yunxi took out the antidote she had prepared before and placed it on another white porcelain plate. She then placed several clean porcelain plates around her and then she caught a little white mouse to simulate the poison and detoxification. Other women's studies would be filled with zither, chess, calligraphy, paintings, and embroidery, but Han Yunxi's was completely different. There were 2 walls of books, a medicine cabinet on one side, and a long workbench in the middle filled with bottles and jars and all sorts of small porcelain dishes. It did not look like a normal woman's study, nor did it look like a doctor's study. In short, it was very strange. Su Xiaoyu was very curious about this study, but it was a pity that she did not have many chances to come in. The Princess Consort had told her that when she was not here, no one was allowed to enter the study. No matter how curious Su Xiaoyu was, she would not break the rules so easily. She only had one goal in sneaking into the Duke of Qin's manor and it was very clear. She would not touch anything else no matter how curious she was. At this time, she came in with the snacks and happened to see Han Yunxi fixing the little white mouse's head and limbs to the wooden board. She was carefully inserting needles into the little white mouse's thigh. Seeing this, Su Xiaoyu could not hold back her curiosity. She put down the snacks and inadvertently took a few more glances. Han Yunxi's attention was all on the little white mouse and did not notice Su Xiaoyu. However, the little thing sitting at the corner of the table had already noticed her. Its large black eyes were filled with vigilance. The little thing's intuition had always been very accurate. In its eyes, Su Xiaoyu was not a good thing. Seeing that Han Yunxi did not notice, Su Xiaoyu carefully put down the snacks and walked a bit closer. Who would have thought that the little thing would suddenly let out a zhi sound? It was not enough to feed the white mice the quasi-beauty's blood. Han Yunxi had to implant the quasi-beauty's blood into some of the white mice's acupoints. She was concentrating on inserting the needles, but who knew that the little thing would suddenly scream? She was so shocked that her hand trembled and the needle was crooked. Little thing. Han Yunxi glared at him and saw Su Xiaoyu standing at the side. She did not take it to heart and vented her anger on the little thing. Stinky thing, do you want to die? When detoxifying and testing for poison, he hated being disturbed the most. If the needle was crooked, this little white mouse could be considered useless. The little thing pitifully whimpered a few times. Taking advantage of the fact that Han Yunxi hadn't flipped out yet, it hurriedly jumped onto the medicine cabinet shelf and hid there. It only wanted to remind Mother Yunxi that Su Xiaoyu had come in. Now that Mother Yunxi had seen her too, it could only endure her anger. Who asked it to be unable to communicate with humans? Seeing Lil Thing run away, Han Yunxi was too lazy to argue. After all, she had more important things to do. Of course, she ignored Su Xiaoyu as well. It was normal for Su Yuyu and Zhao Mama to bring in snacks, so they knew better than to disturb her. After Han Yunxi got rid of the white mouse, she went to fetch another one and began studying it all over again. Su Xiaoyu saw that no one had noticed her, so she didn't dare stay any longer. She hurried out the door. But after Han Yunxi tied up the white mouse, she suddenly turned back to look at the door. Strange. Aside from Lil Thing, even Zhao Mama had been scared out of her wits when she experimented on the white mice in the past. Su Xiaoyu was such a small child, so why wasn't she afraid? Weren't girls most afraid of mice? Moreover, it was a bit cruel and terrifying to tie up a white mouse like this for experiments. But Su Xiaoyu wasn't frightened at all. This child, Han Yunxi felt a knot in her heart. At this moment, Lil Thing, which was lying on the medicine rack, squeaked a few times, as though it was reminding Han Yunxi of something. Do you find it strange too? Han Yunxi asked. Lil Thing didn't understand and squeaked a few more times. Han Yunxi wanted to ask about it later. At this moment, she didn't have the time to think too much. Being disturbed in the middle of an experiment was really depressing. After sorting out her thoughts, Han Yunxi continued. After administering the poison to the white mouse, the signs of poisoning started to show. A single type of chronic poison wouldn't be fatal, but when so many types of poisons were mixed together, it would definitely be fatal. Black blood flowed out of the 7 orifices of the white mouse and it was on the verge of death. Han Yunxi made a prompt decision and administered the antidote by means of acupuncture. Although acupuncture was the fastest way to detoxify the poison, but she still had to wait for 3 minutes. Han Yunxi bit her finger and stared fixedly at the white mouse's reaction. She had to admit that although these 3 minutes were very short, she was still very nervous. If the antidote she developed had too many deviations, then things would be troublesome. With only 10 days left, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to make it in time to develop a new antidote. 3 minutes was very short, but Han Yunxi felt that it was very long. In her mind, Bailey Mingxiang's pale face unconsciously appeared. His faint smile was indifferent, generous and restrained. Suddenly, the white mouse which had been twitching all this time stopped moving. Was it dead or had it been detoxified? Han Yunxi was shocked and immediately went to check the white mouse's pupils. The result was gratifying. The white mouse had only fainted. Han Yunxi immediately activated the detoxification system to do a detailed examination. In the end, she found that the white mouse wasn't completely detoxified, but the poison was mostly gone. There was only a little bit of poison left, but it wasn't fatal. In other words, the antidote she developed using the simulation experiment was still reliable. She just needed to make some minor adjustments to detoxify the poison. Han Yunxi heaved a huge sigh of relief. The hard work she had put in for the past 6 months hadn't been in vain. Bailey Mingxiang, you're lucky. Han Yunxi didn't rest, but immediately started to make minor adjustments to the antidote. She shut herself in the study for an entire night. When the sun was about to rise, she finally developed the antidote that could completely detoxify the quasi-beauty's blood. Although it could only detoxify the quasi-beauty's blood, when the real beauty's blood was developed, this antidote only needed to be slightly adjusted and added 1 or 2 herbs. Han Yunxi, who was well versed in toxicology, was very confident in this. Everything went smoothly. Han Yunxi kept the antidote in a small sealed porcelain bottle and kept it close to her body. Only then did she go to open the door. After pulling an all-nighter, she was tired. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to go upstairs, a black shadow flew in from outside the door without any warning. Assassin! Someone, come! Han Yunxi's first reaction was to shout. However, none of the hidden guards in the surroundings dared to move. Granny Zhao and Su Xiaoyu also rushed over, but they didn't dare to move. Because this black-clothed man was none other than their master, Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi grabbed Han Yunxi's waist and hurriedly left. Using his qinggong, he left the Duke of Qin's residence in a short while. After Han Yunxi saw Long Fei Yi clearly, she was confused. What are you doing? Something happened to Bailey Mingxiang. Long Fei Yi was very anxious. Han Yunxi had never seen him so anxious about anyone since they met. If she didn't know the truth about the beauty's blood, Han Yunxi would probably be overflowing with jealousy. What happened? She was fine when I went to see her yesterday. Han Yunxi was also anxious. She suddenly bled from her 7 orifices and fell unconscious. The poison doctor in the residence said that the poison acted up early. As Long Fei Yi spoke, he sped towards the Bailey army's residence. If anything happened to Bailey Mingxiang, then all their efforts over the past decade would have been for naught. Moreover, it'd be harder than ascending to the heavens to find another person with Bailey Mingxiang's unique constitution. How could he not be anxious? By the time Long Fei Yi arrived at the Bailey army's residence with Han Yunxi, Bailey Mingxiang's pulse had already begun to weaken and her life was in danger. Aside from General Bailey, there were poison doctors in the bedroom. They were all anxious, but they weren't worried about the weak woman's life. They were worried about the beauty's blood in her body. Bailey Mingxiang lay on the bed with her eyes closed. Her face was frighteningly pale, and no one helped her wipe away the blood that flowed out of her 7 orifices. Seeing this scene, Han Yunxi's heart strangely felt stifled. She was so uncomfortable that she couldn't speak. However, she quickly restrained her emotions and entered a state of mind. All of you, leave, she said indifferently. Esteemed Wang Fei, Miss Mingxiang's, the poison doctors didn't leave. Instead, they stepped forward to explain the situation. No matter what, they could still help. Who knew that Han Yunxi's voice would turn cold? Leave. Not to mention the poison doctors, even a military general like General Bailey was intimidated by Han Yunxi's icy aura. When this woman became serious, she could compete with His Highness Duke of Qin. How could the poison doctors dare to waste words? They all tactfully retreated, leaving only Long Fei Yi and General Bailey. You all should leave as well. As Han Yunxi spoke, she took out a handkerchief to wipe Bailey Mingxiang's face. She looked calm and unhurried, but she had already activated the detoxification system to scan and analyze the situation. It wasn't that she was cold-blooded, but that the more urgent the situation was, the more she needed to remain calm. She couldn't afford to make the slightest mistake. General Bailey had heard of Han Yunxi's formidable poison skills for quite some time. He thought that His Highness Duke of Qin probably wouldn't go out, so he wanted to take this opportunity to see for himself. But who knew that Long Fei Yi would turn around and leave without another word? General Bailey had no choice but to follow him out and personally close the door. Han Yunxi couldn't understand why General Bailey would be so cold-blooded. The person lying on the bed was his own daughter. Were the powerful mermaids so loyal to Long Fei Yi that they would be proud to give their lives for him? What reason did the Tang sect have for the mermaids to be so loyal and devoted to him? Of course, Han Yunxi wouldn't think about these questions at this critical juncture. She had to ensure that she was highly focused and had enough energy to allow the detoxification system to perform its inspection and analysis. While paying attention to Bailey Mingxiang's pulse, Han Yunxi analyzed the situation. Not long after, she came to an inconceivable conclusion. The beauty's blood had been cultivated, and the poison had taken effect. Han Yunxi almost couldn't believe the detoxification system's results. The frequency of the poison she had arranged for Bailey Mingxiang to take had already reached the bottom line. She hadn't expected that Bailey Mingxiang would take the initiative to speed up at the last moment. The poison that was supposed to take more than 10 days to finish was finished in just a few days. This woman's body could actually withstand it. Han Yunxi was shocked, but it didn't affect her state of mind. She promptly took out the beauty's blood and compared it with the quasi-beauty's blood from before. Who knew that the results would be? Chapter 419. The beauty's blood cultivated in Bailey Mingxiang's body and the beauty's blood obtained from Han Yunxi's simulated experiment were actually completely identical. Han Yunxi was dumbstruck. She once again suspected that the detoxification system had malfunctioned. She turned off the detoxification system and personally inspected it. Then, she faintly spat out, "I'm a genius." The simulated experiment was actually no different from the real situation. The two were completely identical. Thus, the problem was simple. She didn't even need to make any adjustments to the antidote she prepared. As long as Bailey Mingxiang took it, everything would be fine. Looking at the quiet Bailey Mingxiang, Han Yunxi heaved a sigh of relief. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past half a year, was finally at ease. This kind of outcome could be considered as the heavens taking pity on Bailey Mingxiang. Han Yunxi didn't dare delay any longer and immediately took out the antidote. However, just as she was about to inject the antidote, she suddenly remembered that there was something important that she hadn't done yet. The beauty's blood hadn't been extracted yet. She was so excited that she actually forgot such an important matter. Once Bailey Mingxiang's poison was cured, everything would be for naught. With Long Fei Ye's personality, wouldn't he make Bailey Mingxiang nurture the beauty's blood again? Han Yunxi personally opened the door and invited Long Fei Yi and General Bailey in. She concisely explained the situation. The beauty's blood was saved, and Bailey Mingxiang's life was also saved. Long Fei Yi and General Bailey were naturally overjoyed. General Bailey had a proud expression when he heard this. "Your Highness, Mingxiang didn't disappoint you, right? When has the Bailey clan ever disappointed this prince?" Long Fei Yi countered with a question. These words were undoubtedly the greatest affirmation to General Bailey. He hurriedly bowed. "Thank you for your trust, Your Highness." "Your Highness, how much blood do you need?" Han Yunxi asked in a low voice. Seeing this, General Bailey very consciously avoided the question. His daughter had suffered so much for so many years, even risking her life, but the father and daughter still didn't know the use of the beauty's blood. It wasn't an exaggeration to describe the Bailey clan's loyalty to Long Fei. "I'm not sure. There isn't a lot of perplexing butterfly illusion. You can estimate it yourself." Long Fei Yi also said in a low voice. The beauty's blood was the key to breaking the perplexing butterfly illusion. After all, Bailey Mingxiang's life was at stake. Han Yunxi didn't think too much about it. She cut Bailey Mingxiang's finger and took out a small bottle of blood. The amount was about the same as the amount of perplexing butterfly illusion. After taking the blood, Han Yunxi immediately injected the antidote with acupuncture. Thanks to the countless previous experiments, everything went very smoothly today. It would take some time for the medicine to take effect, but it was certain that Bailey Mingxiang was out of danger. After cleaning up the scene, Han Yunxi sat on the edge of the bed and guarded. Other than her, who else would feel sorry for this woman with a heart of pity? As she looked at Bailey Mingxiang's peaceful face, Han Yunxi was filled with anticipation. She was looking forward to the moment she opened her eyes. She was looking forward to what kind of expression she would have when she found out that she had recovered. Those calm and indifferent eyes would definitely be filled with the joy of a new life, the hope of a new life. This kind of expression was exactly what Han Yunxi, as a doctor, hoped to receive the most in return. Time slowly passed by. Han Yunxi's detox system had been paying attention to Bailey Mingxiang this entire time. It had detected that the poison in her body was gradually weakening. Long Fei Yi didn't have the patience to stand here and guard an unconscious woman. Since Bailey Mingxiang was fine, he was relieved. He calmly said to Han Yunxi, "This prince will wait for you in the guest hall. Come over when you're done." Heartless guy. Han Yunxi muttered. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi and General Bailey couldn't hear her. General Bailey accompanied Long Fei Yi to the guest hall. They still had important matters to discuss. However, before Long Fei Yi and General Bailey could leave the courtyard, Han Yunxi shouted, "Your Highness." General Bailey. What happened? Long Fei Yi and General Bailey immediately turned back. They saw Han Yunxi holding Bailey Mingxiang's hand. Her face was pale and she looked extremely frightened. Bailey Mingxiang's hand was the hand that had just taken her blood. The white gauze that was wrapped around her wound had fallen to the ground. It had already been dyed red, and fresh blood was dripping from her fingers. "What's going on?" General Bailey exclaimed. "There's a problem with her blood coagulation technique. The blood can't be stopped." Han Yunxi's voice was trembling. She had only discovered this when she was holding Bailey Mingxiang's hand. The wound on Bailey Mingxiang's hand was very small to begin with. Furthermore, she had bandaged it and applied medicine, so it definitely wouldn't bleed anymore. She untied the gauze and carefully examined it. Only then did she discover that there was a problem. The so-called blood coagulation function was the ability of platelets to stop bleeding. Platelets would be stimulated by activating factors in the injured area. Platelets would gather and form platelet clots, which would play an elementary role in stopping bleeding. Han Yunxi used the detoxification system's blood detection function and quickly determined that Bailey Mingxiang's platelets were rapidly decreasing. One had to know that low platelets would cause spontaneous bleeding. Even if the wound wasn't bleeding, there would be bleeding under the skin, bleeding from the gums, nosebleeds, and other symptoms. In serious cases, there would also be internal bleeding, cranial bleeding, and life-threatening bleeding. Bailey Mingxiang's platelets were constantly decreasing. If this continued, it would definitely cause a serious shortage of platelets. Not to mention that Bailey Mingxiang was still weak and couldn't afford to bleed. Even if it was a normal person, it would still be very dangerous. Han Yunxi didn't know why there would be such sequelae after detoxification, but she roughly guessed that it had something to do with Bailey Mingxiang's high frequency of taking poison. Her constitution was special, and so was the beauty's blood. It was hard to predict the side effects, and it was hard to explain the reason behind it. In such a situation, it was unrealistic to investigate the complicated cause of the disease. It might not even be possible to find out. In a situation where time was tight, she could only treat the disease as it was. It was precisely this, treat the disease as it was, that made the usually calm Han Yunxi's voice tremble as she spoke. In such an urgent situation, there were only a few treatment methods. The first was plasma exchange therapy, the second was hormone therapy, the third was splenectomy, and the fourth was emergency treatment of blood products. Although there were many methods, they were all modern Western treatments. What would Han Yunxi do if she only had the detoxification system? Blood coagulation function. General Bailey didn't understand. At this moment, he was also burning with anxiety. Previously, he had predicted that Bailey Mingxiang would die after cultivating the beauty's blood. As a father, General Bailey's heart had already given up. He didn't care about his daughter's life and death. As long as she could represent the Bailey family and be loyal to His Highness, it was fine. But now, Han Yunxi gave him hope. He had already saved Bailey Mingxiang's life, but now, General Bailey's tough heart had just softened. How could he face such a cruel reality? Who couldn't stand the difference between having hope and being immediately disappointed? It's a blood deficiency. A serious blood deficiency. In Han Yunxi's impression, this kind of situation could be called a blood deficiency in traditional Chinese medicine. Then what should we do? General Bailey said anxiously. Hurry up and find the residence's doctor. Han Yunxi was very decisive. Although Bailey Mingxiang's illness was so sudden that traditional Chinese medicine's slow treatment method might not be able to help, this was their only chance. Han Yunxi's detoxification system had been constantly monitoring Bailey Mingxiang's condition. While they were talking, the blood platelet count in Bailey Mingxiang's body decreased a little. Soon, Bailey Mingxiang's personal doctor arrived. He also confirmed that it was a blood deficiency. However, the illness was too severe and deteriorating quickly. He was also powerless to do anything. Find Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi made a prompt decision. She couldn't bear to watch a young life disappear just like that. She also couldn't bear to see the results of her hard work for more than half a year go up in smoke. No matter what, as long as Bailey Mingxiang was still breathing, she had to save him. Someone, go to the palace and invite Imperial Physician Gu. Tell him that Miss Mingxiang is sick again. Han Yunxi anxiously ordered. However, the servants outside the room didn't move. Inside the room, General Bailey glanced at Long Feiyi with a complicated gaze. At this time, Han Yunxi remembered that Bailey Mingxiang's body was special, and his blood was also special. This illness involved blood, so it wouldn't be good to let outsiders see it, right? After all, any doctor could see the abnormality in the blood. However, this was a human life. A life that had been loyal to Long Feiyi for more than 10 years. Long Feiyi was silent, and so was General Bailey. He had to consider the overall situation. If the entire Bailey clan's secret was exposed for Mingxiang's sake, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Seeing that the two were silent, Han Yunxi felt bitterly disappointed. If Mingxiang knew your attitude, how bitterly disappointed would she be? After she finished speaking, she instructed the doctor to take care of Bailey Mingxiang and turned to leave. Where are you going? Long Feiyi chased after her. If you don't save him, I'll save him myself. Don't worry, I won't reveal any secrets. Han Yunxi angrily replied. At least tell this prince how to save him. Long Feiyi compromised in the end. Go find Gu Beiyue. I can at least ask him how to treat acute blood loss. Han Yunxi truthfully replied. Although she was angry and anxious, she still maintained the calmness that a doctor should have. Long Feiyi sighed softly, I'll take you to the palace. Hurry up. Han Yunxi didn't reply. Long Feiyi took her out and mounted a horse, heading straight for the palace's Imperial Academy of Medicine. Fortunately, Gu Beiyue happened to be on duty and was in the Imperial Academy of Medicine. Long Feiyi waited outside while Han Yunxi went in alone. She didn't reveal any information and only asked how to treat acute blood loss. This illness is very dangerous. Quickly take me to see him. Gu Beiyue was also anxious. You don't need to go, and you don't need to ask too many questions. Just tell me if there's a way. Han Yunxi was very direct. Gu Beiyue was a smart person, so he immediately understood that the situation wasn't simple. He didn't ask too many questions and turned to write a prescription for Han Yunxi. Use this medicine to stabilize his condition first. Quickly go to the Medicine Ghost Valley and ask Gu Qisha for a medicine. If you can get the medicine and take it within 5 days, you'll have enough time to slowly recuperate. Otherwise, what medicine? Han Yunxi asked anxiously. Cinnabar heart. Gu Beiyue said seriously. Thank you. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She knew that Gu Beiyue would give her hope. She bowed, took the prescription, and immediately left. After she sent someone to deliver the prescription to the Bailey estate, she said to Long Feiyi, Your Highness, go to the Medicine Ghost Valley now. You must return within 5 days. Gu Qisha isn't in the Medicine Ghost Valley. Long Feiyi didn't know what cinnabar heart was, but if it could cure such an urgent illness, it must be an expensive medicine. The old butler in the Medicine Ghost Valley couldn't make the decision. He's not here. How do you know? Han Yunxi was surprised. Long Feiyi subconsciously avoided her gaze. I heard it from my subordinates 2 days ago. Han Yunxi was only surprised that Long Feiyi wasn't here. She didn't know how Long Feiyi found out. I don't care anymore. I have to find it. Let's go now. She was very decisive. Long Feiyi didn't even have the chance to refuse. He could only obey. Note to readers, don't miss out on the Genius Poison Consort's official WeChat account. WeChat ID, Tien Kexia. Chapter 420. Gu Beiyue said that they had 5 days to find the miraculous medicine, Dan Xayan, in Medicine Ghost Valley and return. Otherwise, Bailey Mingxiang would be beyond saving. Han Yunxi said, We have to find it as soon as possible. We have to leave immediately. And so, Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi set off from the Imperial Academy of Medicine. After exhausting themselves to the point that they had to run 2 horses, they silently expended their internal energy and spent an entire day using Qinggong to hasten their journey. Finally, they arrived at Medicine Ghost Valley 2 days later at night. This single trip took them about 2.5 days. This was already the fastest they could go. No matter how fast they went back, they couldn't exceed this amount of time. In other words, if they wanted to return within 5 days, they could only stay in Medicine Ghost Valley for 2 to 4 hours. Han Yunxi had only come to Medicine Ghost Valley twice, both times to ask for medicine. The most recent time was to ask for medicine for the plague. Gu Qisha wasn't in the valley at the time, so it was the old steward who received them. Medicine Ghost Valley was the same as always. The courtyard outside was filled with people begging for medicine. Unfortunately, the courtyard gates were tightly shut. Han Yunxi looked at the people kneeling outside, especially the elderly and children. She couldn't help but curse Gu Qisha for being scum. He was the scum of the medical world. He was an evil person. Even those profiteers who specialized in inflating the prices of medicinal ingredients were kinder than Gu Qisha. At least they could still buy the medicinal ingredients they had. Gu Qisha's medicinal ingredients were bought and sold based on his mood. Even if you had money, you couldn't buy them. This kind of person, the heavens really wasted their talent in medicine. When they arrived at the courtyard gates, the two of them reported their names and the old steward personally came to receive them. Your Highness Duke of Qin, a few days ago Chu. Before the old steward could finish speaking, Long Fei Yi immediately cut him off. I'm here for an urgent matter. Let's cut the crap. This prince wants a medicine called Dan Exian. Name your price. Dan Exian. The old steward pretended to be troubled. Stop pretending. Medicine Ghost Valley definitely has it. Han Yinshi said cold. Gu Beiyue said that there was one here, so it couldn't be wrong. The old steward smiled embarrassedly. The heart of herbalism is indeed in the valley. But, how did esteemed Wang Fei know? Cut the crap. I want this medicine. Hurry up and take it out. Han Yinshi knew that she was very domineering, but in order to save people, she was so domineering. Before coming here, she had already prepared herself to search the valley. After all, she didn't have a good impression of Gu Qi Sha, and the man beside her also had the ability to search the valley. A cunning look flashed in the old steward's eyes as he helplessly said, Esteemed Wang Fei, you may not know this, but the pill heart is personally kept by His Excellency Pill Fiend. However, His Excellency Pill Fiend is not in the valley. Find His Excellency Pill Fiend immediately, or let us search for him. Do as you see fit. Han Yinshi said harshly. The old steward looked as if he didn't know what to do with Han Yinshi. He cast a pleading look at Long Fei Yi. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you should know that His Excellency has made an appointment with you on the 15th of next month. The old steward was clearly doing this on purpose. He spoke so quickly that even Long Fei Yi couldn't interrupt him. Han Yinshi was puzzled. She turned to look at Long Fei Yi. You have an appointment with him? And Long Fei Yi gave an indifferent grunt in response. He didn't explain much, but instead asked the old steward, You mean to say that Gu Qi Sha won't be back for a while? The meaning behind his words was clear. If Gu Qi Sha doesn't come back, we'll have to search the valley. The old steward inadvertently glanced at the door and replied helplessly, Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, it's not that Medicine Ghost Valley doesn't want to give you face, but you've come too quickly. Why don't you stay here and wait while this one does his best to find His Excellency Pill Fiend? Where's the medicine storage room? Han Yinshi didn't beat around the bush. The old steward's mouth twitched. Esteemed Wang Fei is even more domineering than His Highness Duke of Qin. The old steward didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at the door again. It was at this moment that a strange laughter rang out. Long time no see, Qin Wang Fei. Han Yunshi immediately recognized this strange laughter. It belonged to Gu Qi Sha. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw Gu Qi Sha, dressed in all black, gliding in through the door. He only landed on the ground when he entered the room, revealing his boots. His ghastly appearance would frighten any young girl. However, Han Yunshi wasn't a young girl. She stretched out her hand in front of Gu Qi Sha. I want the essence of cinnabar. Gu Qi Sha wasn't in a hurry. He leisurely sat down and looked at Han Yunshi with interest. His sharp eyes were filled with joy, and his smile seemed to overflow. Anyone who was paying attention would be able to tell that this guy was especially happy at this moment. The look in his eyes made Long Fei Yi very unhappy. Chu Shifeng had just been told a few days ago that this guy wasn't in Medicine Ghost Valley. Why was he here today? Long Fei only looked at Gu Qi Sha coldly without batting an eyelid. I'm in a hurry to save someone. Are you giving it to me or not? Han Yunshi asked seriously. Gu Qi Sha pretended not to understand. Lass, what did you say just then? What do you want? Essence of cinnabar, I want the essence of cinnabar. Han Yunshi said loudly. Oh, you want this excellency's essence of cinnabar. Gu Qi murmured to himself. Under his black robes, he was currently clutching his hand over his heart. Unfortunately, no one saw. What did you say? Gu Qi had spoken too quietly for Han Yunshi to hear clearly. Gu Qi laughed. Lass, you said last time that if we met again, you'd tell me where the wall-hitting ghost was. Of course Han Yunshi remembered. She'd whetted Gu Qi appetite the first time she'd come to Medicine Ghost Valley to find a way out for herself. Give me the essence of cinnabar and I'll tell you right away, Han Yunshi said seriously. No. You tell me first. Gu Qi seemed to be in a rush on purpose. It'd take time to search the area, but since this guy was here, she might as well deal with him directly. Han Yunshi kept her cool and said patiently, if I tell you first, you'll give me the essence of cinnabar. She assumed that Gu Qi would seize the chance to make things difficult for her and raise other conditions. She was even prepared to concede unconditionally, but Gu Qi simply nodded his head. Of course. You said it. You can't go back on your word. Han Yunshi didn't dare to believe him. Gu Qi suddenly chuckled meaningfully. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Duke of Qin is here. How could old man go back on his word? He made it sound as if he was afraid of Long Fei Yi. Han Yunshi didn't know that Gu Qi and Long Fei Yi had fought before. However, in her opinion, Gu Qi was indeed afraid of Long Fei Yi. How could His Excellency Pill Fiend go back on his word? Han Yunshi said first, before giving Gu Qi an answer. The wall-hitting ghost was right on top of your roof. I saw it when I came in. Gu Qi stretched out his bony hands and clapped them loudly. You're amazing, lass. Old man likes it. Han Yunshi was about to speak when Gu Qi suddenly pulled out a brocade box from his sleeve. Lass, this is the essence of herbalism. Although they had agreed to it, Han Yunshi still felt that Gu Qi was being too kind this time. She almost couldn't believe it. When the brocade box was opened, there was a blood-red pill lying inside. Gu Qi handed the pill to Han Yunshi and smiled. Lass, I'm giving you my entire essence of herbalism. Han Yunshi felt uncomfortable when she heard those words, so she didn't take it. The usually calm Long Fei Yi couldn't keep his cool. He suddenly snatched the essence of herbalism from Gu Qi and coldly said, it's for saving others. She doesn't need it. A disdainful smile flitted across Gu Qi eyes. Your Highness Duke of Qin, I'll definitely give you an answer on the 15th of next month. Long Fei Yi glanced at him, then left with Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi had just found out that Long Fei Yi had an appointment with Gu Qi. Now that she had the essence of herbalism, it was more important for her to hurry back and save Gu Qi. It wouldn't be too late to ask Long Fei Yi what medicine he needed when they got back. Gu Qi trailed after them when they reached the door. Your Highness Duke of Qin, the 2 medicines you asked for are no ordinary items. What are you planning to do with them? Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed, but he ignored Gu Qi completely. He carried Han Yunshi and mounted his horse as soon as he stepped out of the door. Gu Qi didn't give up and continued to follow them outside. Your Highness Duke of Qin, Bear Chuan and Panoptic Red Lotus aren't easy to obtain. This lord is very curious. Han Yunshi finally understood why Long Fei Yi was looking for Gu Qi. It turned out that he wanted the prescription to cure Mute Granny. She had already given him the serpent fruit, so all that was left was Bear Chuan and Panoptic Red Lotus. She would be able to make a prescription to cure Mute Granny's poison. Your Highness, so you... Han Yunshi couldn't help but ask. Gu Qi narrowed his eyes, as if he was waiting for something. Long Fei Yi admitted openly. Your Highness, I thought you'd given up. Han Yunshi was a little agitated. Long Fei Yi had already said that Mute Granny's chances of survival were very slim. She had already given up, but she hadn't expected that he was still trying. Long Fei Yi's gaze was somewhat evasive as he said indifferently, "In any case, let's find the medicine first." Han Yunxi nestled in Long Fei Yi's arms and raised her head to look at him. Her eyes were filled with indescribable emotions. Beside them, Gu Qixia was dumbfounded. This wasn't the plot he'd been hoping for. When he saw that the two of them had really left, Gu Qixia hurriedly waved at them. "Esteemed Wang Fei, please take care of this lord's essence. Your Highness Duke of Qin, farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Fei Yi immediately gripped his sword, but Han Yunxi stopped him. "We're in a hurry. Next time, we'll settle accounts with him." She'd previously thought that the essence was a misunderstanding, but now it seemed that Gu Qixia was deliberately teasing her. That bastard! Han Yunxi turned to look at the kneeling crowd in the courtyard. She secretly vowed that one day, she'd deal with Gu Qixia and turn the Medicine Ghost Valley into a place that would grant all requests. When he saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's figures disappear into the distance, the old steward said in a low voice, "My lord, isn't it inappropriate for you to offend His Highness Duke of Qin like this?" Gu Qixia looked back and snorted coldly. "Do you really think this lord is afraid of him? Just you wait. Just you wait. Just wait until I figure out some things, then I'll teach Long Fei Yi a lesson." Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi traveled day and night on their way back. During this journey, Long Fei Yi had expended a lot of internal energy. If Bailey Mingxiang knew that His Highness Duke of Qin had sacrificed so much, he'd probably be touched and even more distressed. By the time Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi arrived at the Bailey estate, it was the 5th night. Time was of the essence. Fortunately, Han Yunxi was quick-witted. She'd already placed the essence into the detoxification system in her detoxification space. She'd processed it, boiled it, dried it, and ground it into a powder that could be brewed. As soon as she entered the room and listened to the doctor's report on the situation over the past 5 days, she sent everyone out. Then, she took out the powder from the detoxification system and brewed it. She personally fed it to Bailey Mingxiang. After feeding him the medicine, she finally sighed in relief. She sat down and activated the detoxification system to check Bailey Mingxiang's blood. However, as she sat there, she suddenly fainted and slowly fell onto Bailey Mingxiang's body. Chapter 421. Han Yunxi silently fainted in Bailey Mingxiang's arms, and the detoxification system immediately stopped working. This time, the fainting wasn't caused by the detoxification system. Han Yunxi was simply too exhausted. On the morning of Bailey Mingxiang's accident, she had pulled an all-nighter. Over the past 5 days, she had been traveling day and night with Long Fei Yi. Although she had taken a nap in Long Fei Yi's arms, she hadn't slept for long. With a life in her hands, she really couldn't sleep. Moreover, Long Fei Yi had been traveling so hard, so how could she sleep peacefully? Her mind had been stretched taut these past few days, and she had neglected her exhaustion. As soon as she relaxed, she couldn't hold on any longer. At the door, Long Fei Yi faced the courtyard with his hands clasped behind his back. General Bailey paced back and forth, both master and servant waiting. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement inside. General Bailey couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, we've already brought the medicine. There shouldn't be any major problems, right?" General Bailey really wanted His Highness Duke of Qin to go in and take a look. Esteemed Wang Fei would get angry if she was disturbed by others, but if she was disturbed by His Highness Duke of Qin, she probably wouldn't. Long Fei Yi only grunted in response. When Han Yunxi was saving people, he was basically invited out. He had never been there to watch. General Bailey wanted to say something, but hesitated. He could only pace back and forth again. He waited and waited, but suddenly, a loud shout came from inside the room. Someone! Someone come! This was Bailey Mingxiang's voice. What's going on? Before General Bailey could react, Long Fei Yi had already pushed open the door and rushed in. Bailey Mingxiang had already sat up and was looking at the unconscious Han Yunxi on her lap. Her face was full of terror and she didn't know what to do. When she saw His Highness Duke of Qin rushing over, Bailey Mingxiang was even more terrified. Long Fei Yi pulled Han Yunxi into his arms and asked angrily, "What's going on?" When Bailey Mingxiang saw His Highness Duke of Qin's icy face and blood-red eyes up close, he was so frightened that he didn't know what to do. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She had just woken up, and her memories were stuck a few days ago. She didn't understand the situation at all. Seeing Bailey Mingxiang's reaction, Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with impatience. He roared, "Bailey Yuanlong, get a doctor." General Bailey had just arrived at the door when he saw the scene in the room and was frightened. He thought that something had happened to his daughter, but he never thought that something had happened to the Princess Consort. Fortunately, the doctor was nearby and quickly came over. The physician in the estate was already in awe of His Highness Duke of Qin. When he entered and saw His Highness Duke of Qin's cold and murderous face, his legs went weak. He took a few deep breaths before he dared to take his pulse. The room was silent. Bailey Mingxiang had already calmed down. Although she didn't know what had happened, she knew that esteemed Wang Fei must have come to save her. After the physician took Han Yunxi's pulse and confirmed her condition, he finally relaxed. "Don't worry, Your Highness. Esteemed Wang Fei just fell asleep because she was too tired. She'll wake up when she's had enough sleep. She'll be fine after resting for a while." Fortunately, it was a small matter. If it had been something serious, the physician was worried that he would have been kicked out. That was because His Highness Duke of Qin's expression was really, really ugly. Long Fei Ye's thin lips were tightly pursed. Even the lines at the corners of his mouth were cold and solemn. He carried Han Yunxi and prepared to leave. At this time, General Bailey hurriedly said, "Mingxiang, hurry and thank His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei. If it weren't for His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei traveling day and night for 5 days and 5 nights to find medicine, your little life would have been long gone." 5 days and 5 nights, traveling day and night. His Highness also went. So esteemed Wang Fei fainted from exhaustion because she was trying to save her. So His Highness Duke of Qin's bloodshot eyes were also because of her exhaustion. Bailey Mingxiang's heart tightened. Ignoring her weak body, she hurriedly got off the bed and knelt on the cold floor to kowtow. "Thank you, Your Highness Duke of Qin. Thank you, esteemed Wang Fei, for saving my life." Long Fei didn't even look back as she knocked her head against the ground. Instead, he strode away like a shooting star. As for whether Bailey Mingxiang had taken the medicine and recovered, he didn't care. He was already far away, but Bailey Mingxiang was still kneeling on the ground. General Bailey hurriedly helped her up and had the physician take a look. After the physician's examination, he repeatedly expressed his amazement. Imperial Physician Gu's medicine is indeed miraculous. Mrs. Body is fine, but she's still too weak. She needs to slowly recover. General Bailey was overjoyed. He rewarded the physician and had him withdraw. Bailey Mingxiang finally opened her mouth. "Father, His Highness," as a father, he knew best what his daughter was thinking. He told Bailey Mingxiang everything that had happened over the past few days, including the matter of the beauty's blood. "You're just disobedient. Esteemed Wang Fei told you to take the medicine slowly, but you just had to eat it all at once." Fortunately, esteemed Wang Fei was only exhausted. If something had happened to her, I'd like to see what you'd do. General Bailey reprimanded. Bailey Mingxiang lowered her head and silently accepted the criticism. She hadn't eaten all of the poison on purpose. That day, when the poison had flared up, she'd been in so much pain that she'd lost all reason. She'd eaten all of the poison in one go. Afterwards, she didn't know what had happened. Some pain couldn't be understood unless one experienced it personally. Thus, no matter how much she explained, it was useless. Others would only think she was being unreasonable. The Bailey clan's mission is to obey. Have you forgotten? General Bailey questioned loudly. Although he loved his daughter, the clan's mission was more important. Bailey Mingxiang raised her head, her eyes clear and resolute. Daughter knows her wrongs. Father, please punish me. General Bailey exhaled. Don't let your thoughts run wild. Be good and take care of your body. I'll send over a few servant girls and Mama to serve you later. Bailey Mingxiang's eyes tightened as she quickly lowered her head. This was the first time her father had spoken to her like this in all these years. General Bailey rose to his feet and prepared to leave before he said, Mingxiang, since I've saved your life, I should arrange your marriage for you as well. Which daughter of a large clan had the right to decide their own marriage? No matter who they married, everything had to be done in the interest of the clan. Marrying a daughter-in-law was the same as marrying another clan's power. It was the same with marrying off a daughter. General Bailey's other daughters had all married into powerful and influential clans in Cloud Realm continent, expanding the Bailey clan's sphere of influence. Bailey Mingxiang was the Bailey clan's youngest daughter and the one with the most suitors. As long as she was willing to marry, the Bailey clan would definitely be able to win over an equal number of allies. Bailey Mingxiang kept her head bowed and didn't answer General Bailey. Marriage wasn't something that could be decided in a day or two, so General Bailey was only reminding her first. Then he left. At the Duke of Qin's estate, Long Feiyi had summoned Gu Beiyue as soon as he returned. Although Gu Beiyue was on his guard, only Gu Beiyue's medical skills earned his trust in the capital city. With Gu Beiyue's medical skills, he didn't even need to take Han Yunqi's pulse to know what was wrong with her. Moreover, he didn't only take her pulse seriously, but also did a few small tests to ascertain that Han Yunqi was simply exhausted. Knitting his brows, he said, Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei fainted from exhaustion. She's too tired. When will she wake up? Long Feiyi asked coldly. That's hard to say. Gu Beiyue's expression was serious. Your Highness, if she fainted from exhaustion, she'll wake up in a day or two at best. In severe cases, what? Long Feiyi grew anxious. Gu Beiyue withdrew and bowed with his hands clasped in front. In severe cases, she'll never wake up. Slap. There was a loud crash as Long Feiyi slapped the table. The precious ebony tea table shattered into pieces on the floor. Zhao Mama and Su Xiaoyu were both frightened to death. They didn't dare to clean up the mess. What's her condition? Long Feiyi asked angrily. Your Highness, please calm your anger. Esteemed Wang Fei's condition isn't that serious yet. This official can't give you an exact time, but I can guarantee that she'll wake up within 3 days. I hope Your Highness can remind esteemed Wang Fei not to overwork herself in the future. This official will prescribe some nourishing herbs. When esteemed Wang Fei wakes up, she can drink them frequently. Gu Beiyue hurriedly replied. Long Feiyi finally let out a big sigh of relief. The sound of his exhalation was especially loud in the silent room. Zhao Mama couldn't help sneaking a glance at him. This was the first time she'd seen her master's emotions written all over his face. Gu Beiyue wrote down a prescription on the spot. All of the herbs he wrote were very expensive and nourishing herbs. Many of them weren't even available in the Imperial Hospital. They had to go to Medicine City to buy them at a high price. Some of them were so expensive that they were the only ones in the world. For example, there was a 1,000-year-old snow lotus, a 2,000-year-old lingji, and a 3-year-old Cotinopsis ginseng. Even if they were able to buy these herbs, they would be treasured. Who would be willing to eat them? However, since Gu Beiyue had written them out, he believed that Long Fei Yi had the ability to find them for Han Yunxi to eat. Actually, Gu Beiyue could determine the exact time Han Yunxi would wake up, but he exaggerated it on purpose. He didn't want Han Yunxi to tire herself out all day. Besides Long Fei Yi, who else could control this woman? Han Yunxi, does finding someone who can protect you better than me to stay by your side count as protecting you? Gu Beiyue felt his heart ache at the sight of Han Yunxi's ashen white face. He was a little reluctant to part with her, but in the end he still bid farewell. Long Fei Yi glanced at the prescription before handing it over to Chu Shifeng. Hurry and find them. Find 3 portions for your lordship first. Chu Shifeng grew gloomy. They couldn't even find a single portion of the herbs here, but His Highness wanted to find 3 portions. And to find 3 portions first. Sob, he only begged esteemed Wang Fei to get better quickly. Your Highness, drink some water. Don't tire yourself out, Xiao Mama carefully offered him a cup of warm water. Long Fei Yi accepted it and waved a hand to dismiss them all. Once Xiao Mama and Su Xiaoyu had both left, Long Fei's frosty face finally softened. He looked at Han Yunxi, his eyes filled with heartache that was so thick it couldn't be dispelled. He gently stroked Han Yunxi's face and said helplessly, "Your lordship was careless and you ended up like this." He was used to being alone and didn't need to worry about another person. But now he realized that he had to pay more attention to this woman. Long Fei Ye's fingers brushed past Han Yunxi's dry lips before he immediately drank a mouthful of warm water. He slowly leaned closer and began to feed her mouth, but right at this moment. Chapter 422. Just as Long Fei Yi approached her with a mouthful of water in his mouth, Han Yunxi's eyes suddenly widened. Long Fei Yi did not expect this and almost choked on the water in his mouth. How did this woman wake up so quickly? Didn't Gu Beiyue say that she would wake up in at least a day or 2? Gu Beiyue wasn't exaggerating, but Han Yunxi was someone who couldn't keep her thoughts to herself. Even if she was so tired that she fainted, she would subconsciously feel uneasy until she finished her task. In fact, she was still very, very tired. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei Yi in front of her in confusion, then looked around and asked anxiously, "Why am I here? How's Bailey Mingxiang?" Long Fei Yi didn't back away. Instead, he placed his hands on either side of her and leaned against her body. Cold as he looked down at her and said sternly, "Take care of yourself first." His sudden outburst gave Han Yunxi a fright. What was he being so fierce about? "Can't you tell me if you're tired?" Long Fei Yi asked angrily. Han Yunxi roughly knew what was going on. She must have collapsed from exhaustion. She could feel that the detoxification system seemed to have lost its power, and even its activation was very, very slow. However, this wasn't important. After all, it was a small matter. She asked again, "Your Highness, has Bailey Mingxiang recovered after taking the medicine?" Long Fei Ye's earlier unhappiness was only in his eyes, but now it was written all over his cold face. He threw 2 words at her, "Dead." What? Han Yunxi was shocked and wanted to get up, but Long Fei Yi pressed her down hard. Han Yunxi was in pain, but she didn't care. She asked in shock, how could this be? Was the medicine fake? She had already done her best. Even if she was so tired that she was about to collapse, she still held on until she was fed the medicine. How could this be? He's just a subordinate. Why are you so concerned about him? Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunshi shook her head in disbelief. Long Fei Yi, aren't subordinates also human? How much had Bailey Mingxiang suffered in order to raise Beauty's blood? Even if there's no merit, there's still hard work. Aren't you afraid of losing people's hearts by being so heartless? Han Yunshi did not understand. Long Fei Yi was able to win the hearts of the people by providing disaster relief. How could he be so heartless to his subordinates? Long Fei Yi was stunned. He looked at Han Yunshi without saying anything. Ever since he was young, he had never understood what was called meritorious service or hard work. Whether it was his imperial mother, Aunt Ru, Tang Zijin, or even Bailey Yuanlong, they all told him that there was no such thing as merit or hard work, only honor. All the efforts and sacrifices made for the sake of that great cause were worthy of pride. He always remembered his imperial mother's words. For the sake of that great cause, you must also give up everything. You only need to keep your life. Han Yunshi could not accept the news of Bailey Mingxiang's death. She was agitated and filled with anger. Long Fei Yi, I was the one who gave Bailey Mingxiang the poison. I don't want to be an executioner. I don't want to give her hope but not be able to save her. As she spoke, she was about to push Long Fei Yi away, but Long Fei Yi pressed her down again. His tone finally softened. She's not dead. What? Han Yunshi was shocked again. Her heart was beating wildly, and she almost couldn't breathe. What did you say? She's not dead. She can get out of bed now. She should be fine. Long Fei Yi vaguely remembered that before he left, Bailey Mingxiang had gotten out of bed and knelt down to thank him. Han Yunshi grabbed Long Fei Yi's hand and asked seriously, really? Long Fei Yi was very impatient, but he still nodded. Han Yunshi exhaled in relief. Thank goodness, thank goodness. How's the situation now? I'll go take a look. But Long Fei Yi's cold face turned completely gloomy. He was too lazy to waste words, but simply warned, why don't you try getting out of bed? Han Yunshi gave a start. Only then did she realize that she was being pressed down by a certain stern person. Currently, Lil Thing was hiding on the side, watching the ambiguous position of the two people on the bed for a long time. It couldn't understand what Mama Yunshi and Papa Long were saying, but felt that this position was too something. Even it felt a little embarrassed. It was wrong to peep at other people's privacy, but this scene was so beautiful that it couldn't bear to look away. This position, combined with Long Fei Yi's stormy gaze, convinced Han Yunshi to be obedient. As long as the medicine wasn't fake and Bailey Mingxiang's life was saved, then all that was left was to nurse her back to health. She could set her mind at ease. As for trying to get out of bed, she decided against it. Long Fei Yi's gaze right now could kill. She admitted that she wasn't so noble. Compared to Bailey Mingxiang's life, she valued her own more. Han Yunshi's expression was docile as she pursed her lips, not daring to speak. Long Fei Yi looked at her. No, it was more accurate to say that he was glaring at her. Actually, she didn't quite understand. She was just tired, so why was he being so fierce to her? Silence reigned in the room for a long time. Han Yunshi felt uncomfortable from being glared at, so she avoided Long Fei Yi's gaze and asked mildly, Your Highness, can you bestow upon me a mouthful of water? I'm thirsty. Although Long Fei Yi wasn't happy, he still brought the cup over immediately. When he saw Han Yunshi get up, he even helped her up. However, before he could completely help her up, Long Fei Yi suddenly pressed her down again. What was this guy doing? Han Yunshi fell back onto the pillow. She was baffled and almost flipped out. Who knew that Long Fei Yi would drink a mouthful of water and lean in very, very close to her? Han Yunshi's eyes widened. She seemed to have realized something, and her first reaction was to purse her lips. Long Fei had water in his mouth and couldn't speak, but he raised his chin at Han Yunxi, indicating for her to open her mouth. This ambiguous action, this seductive expression, it was as bad as it could get. This man was very close to her. His hot breath scattered on her face, and his smooth chin was neither close nor far, occasionally touching her face. Han Yunxi's entire body tensed up. This was the first time she realized that this emotionless and cold man could be so bad. "Give me a mouthful of water to drink" was actually interpreted in this way. She was drunk. Han Yunxi didn't open her mouth, so Long Fei kept rubbing against her. Han Yunxi glared at him, but he simply pressed his lips against hers. On the rafters, Lil Thing covered its eyes with its paws, but still peeked between its fingers. It discovered that Mama Yunxi was really getting bolder and bolder, while Papa Long was getting naughtier and naughtier. Lil Thing was clearly a bystander, but it was very, very nervous. It didn't even dare to breathe too loudly for fear of being discovered. Han Yunxi stubbornly refused to budge, but Long Fei wasn't so kind. He actually reached out and pinched Han Yunxi's nose. "Is this even possible? Long Fei, you can't play like this." Han Yunxi was so anxious that she tried to push him away, but she couldn't. Soon enough, she found it hard to breathe and could only open her mouth. Long Fei was very satisfied and took the chance to pass the water over. Han Yunxi felt disgusted at such a thing. She couldn't accept it, but when faced with her beloved, she didn't feel any repulsion in her heart at all. Of course, Han Yunxi had no experience with such things. Long Fei carefully and seriously fed her, so she didn't dare to resist. Instead, she accepted the food even more carefully than Long Fei. This was a technical job, so it was easy to choke on it. Long Fei finished feeding her a mouthful, then drank another. "Your Highness, just giving me a mouthful is enough," Han Yunxi murmured. Long Fei ignored her and pressed closer. Han Yunxi only half resisted and half agreed to cooperate with him. Just like that, he fed her mouthful by mouthful. Long Fei, who was also inexperienced, became more experienced as he fed her. Soon, he finished feeding her a cup of water. Finally, he asked, "Are you still thirsty?" Han Yunxi immediately shook her head. "No." However, Long Fei asked again, "Are you hungry?" Han Yunxi was shocked. She was obviously hungry, but she shook her head resolutely. "I'm not hungry." Fortunately, Long Fei didn't ask any more questions. He was finally willing to stand up. "I've seen Gu Beiyue. You're too tired and your condition is very serious. You need to rest well." Gu Beiyue had already exaggerated Han Yunxi's condition, but who knew that Long Fei would exaggerate it again? Han Yunxi was very clear about her own condition, but when she heard Long Fei's words, she couldn't help but suspect that she was really exhausted. Thus, she nodded obediently. "Regarding the perplexing butterfly illusion, there's no rush," Long Fei said calmly. Now that he had the beauty's blood, his research on the perplexing butterfly illusion had taken a step forward. Han Yunxi didn't feel anything at first, but when she heard Long Fei's words, she suddenly realized how much this guy cared about her. He actually wanted her to put aside something as important as deciphering the perplexing butterfly illusion for the time being. Her heart, which had been a little chaotic from being bullied earlier, suddenly calmed down. Thinking back to his anger just now, she finally understood his worries. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei, her gaze and voice gentle. "Your Highness, don't worry. I'm fine." When Han Yunxi looked at him like this, Long Fei actually felt uncomfortable. He didn't say anything else, and only got up after tucking Han Yunxi in. Han Yunxi looked at the blanket that was tucked tightly in by him, a blissful smile on her face. Sometimes, pledges of undying love weren't as important as a small gesture. After Long Fei left, he immediately ordered Zhao Mama to bring in the food. He also said, "Let esteemed Wang Fei rest well. Without this prince's orders, she's not allowed to leave." Zhao Mama was overjoyed. She saw esteemed Wang Fei bustling about every day, so she had been hoping for her to get sick and stay in leisurely Cloud Pavilion for a few days. Taking care of patients and nursing their bodies was what Zhao Mama was best at. Because of her exhaustion, Han Yunxi's detox system couldn't work for the time being. She could only put aside the matter of the perplexing butterfly illusion for now. She lazily curled up on the bed, looking at the gloomy sky outside the window. She suddenly realized that this weather was very suitable for slacking off. She was very glad. Thanks to this illness, she could steal half a day of leisure. However, before the sky turned dark, Han Yunxi realized that she definitely couldn't afford to slack off. She didn't understand the poison system and was very bored. She wanted to go downstairs to the study, but Zhao Mama didn't let her. "Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness said that you need to rest well," Zhao Mama said as she brought in a bowl of ginseng soup. Han Yunxi was thoroughly enraged. "Still want a drink? Do you think I'm in confinement?" In just a day, Zhao Mama had brought her more than 10 bowls of soup. 100-year-old hen with astragalus root, 1000-year-old snow ginseng stewed with hen, poria and atractylodes macrocephala stewed with hen, donkey hide gelatin stewed with hen, and even bird's nest stewed with hen. "Esteemed Wang Fei, you'll have to suffer first. His Highness has already sent someone to find Imperial Physician Gu's prescription. These soups will help you replenish your energy first." Zhao Mama didn't grasp the main point. Han Yunxi didn't want to waste her breath and waved her hand, indicating for her to leave. However, at this time, Long Fei came over. Chapter 423. As soon as Long Fei entered the room, Zhao Mama tactfully placed the soup on the table by the bed and silently withdrew. Han Yunxi assumed that Long Fei wouldn't come by. He should at least sleep for a day and a night, but here he was again. Although Han Yunxi dearly wanted Long Fei to drink the ginseng soup to nourish his body, he saw Long Fei's eyes on the soup and quickly picked it up and downed it all in one go. She must be afraid of Long Fei's teasing. Currently, Lil Thing was still nestled on the roof beam. It had been there all day because there was good food to eat here. Even if it couldn't eat, smelling the chicken soup was a form of enjoyment. Lil Thing glanced at Mama Yunxi's reaction and felt disdain in its heart. Mama Yunxi liked Big Brother Long, but that was all in her mouth and heart. She didn't like him in action. She was just a coward. Big Brother Long had never said that he liked Mama Yunxi, so it was hard to tell what his heart was like. But his actions definitely showed that he liked Mama Yunxi. Lil Thing firmly believed that only true love came from actions. Long Fei saw Han Yunxi's reaction and didn't even notice the curve of his lips quirking into a smile. He sat down by the bed. "Your Highness, is something the matter?" Han Yunxi asked in bewilderment. Once upon a time, she'd been the one to find Long Fei and Long Fei to ask her these questions. "Can't I come if I don't have anything to do?" Long Fei was stumped by the question. He coughed a few times uncomfortably and asked, "Are you feeling better?" "I'm basically fine. Tomorrow we can try pouring the beauty's blood into the perplexing butterfly illusion," Han Yunxi said seriously. "No rush, take care of yourself," Long Fei emphasized again. Han Yunxi silently chuckled. He wouldn't know if she secretly put it into the detox system for research. "Your Highness, can Gu Qi Sha find the panoptic red lotus and bear chuan?" Han Yunxi recalled this matter. The panoptic red lotus and bear chuan were not ordinary medicinal ingredients. They were the most precious of the precious. It's scheduled for the 15th of next month. If he can't find it, no one else can. Long Fei Yi said lightly. I was planning to ask Mu Linger about it, Mu Linger said. If it weren't for the fact that Mute Granny's whereabouts were still unknown, Han Yunxi would have already gone to Mu Linger to look for the medicine. The broomcorn millet poison was most likely administered by Mu Linger. Although Mu Linger was Mu Linger's most beloved daughter, she didn't know anything about it. Therefore, even if she was given the antidote for the broomcorn millet poison, she wouldn't have thought that it would be used to save Mute Granny. Long Fei Yi hesitated for a moment and probed, I'm afraid that even if we find the medicine, it'll be useless. Han Yunxi sighed. With only this clue, we might as well go find Muing Dong. Actually, that white-clothed young master from the Shadow Clan might know something, but judging from his two answers, Han Yunxi didn't have much hope. She didn't like not being able to get what she wanted or ask what she wanted. If she couldn't get what she wanted, she wouldn't be able to take the initiative. She would always be under the control of others. Let's not alert the enemy. Long Fei Yi said lightly. Han Yunxi understood what he meant. Muing Dong had imprisoned Mute Granny as if he was using her as bait to wait for something. Muing Dong didn't know much about their situation and was waiting for them to find him. Or maybe Muing Dong was also investigating Han Yunxi. Before they knew the situation, asking Muing Dong about Madame Tianqin's secret was the stupidest thing to do. Your Highness, if Mute Granny is really gone, what should we do? Han Yunxi was extremely helpless. Long Fei Yi was silent for a long time before asking, Han Yunxi, is your background very important to you? It's not important. It's not important at all. Han Yunxi replied in her heart. She wasn't the real young miss of the Han family. Miss Han's background had nothing to do with her at all. Helpless, Han Yunxi couldn't tell Long Fei Yi so much. This was her secret alone. My mother died in childbirth. This matter is very strange. If someone wanted to kill my mother back then, why did they leave me alive? Tianqin is Muaxian. Does my father know of my existence? Is he looking for me? Is he in contact with Muing Dong? Han Yunxi said seriously. If there really was a murderer, they wouldn't even let a pregnant woman go. There must be a deep hatred. If there was such a deep hatred, why did they let her go? Let the Han family go. This was strange. There must be a reason for leaving her alive. Also, that young master from the Shadow Clan, Han Yunxi didn't know what to say. Although the white-clothed young master had repeatedly said that he saved her and helped her for the sake of the poison beast, she felt that it wasn't the case. It was a kind of protection with his life. After hesitating for a moment, Han Yunxi said, Your Highness, if I'm really the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family, does that mean my father is a member of the Western Qin imperial family? Does that white-clothed young master know my father? To Han Yunxi, these things weren't important, but they were still important. Although she wasn't the real young miss of the Han family, she had inherited the identity of the young miss of the Han family. These matters were still related to her. She could ignore the secret of her background, but the people who knew about it wouldn't let her go. The identity of the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family was so prominent. Many people wanted to use this identity to make an issue of it. Also, if her father was really still alive, was he thinking of reviving the country? The people from the Shadow Clan had appeared. What about the other nobles? The orphan of the imperial family was proud and heavy. She carried too much on her shoulders and her hatred was too heavy. She couldn't be carefree and unrestrained. Han Yunxi hated this identity the most. Did Han Yunxi's words count as an answer to his question? Long Fei Yi said indifferently, let's see what Muing Dong and that white-clothed young master do. Han Yunxi nodded. If they couldn't pick up this clue about mute Granny, then they could only wait and see. She thought that if she was really the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family, then there would be a day when someone would come knocking on her door. The two chatted and unknowingly, it was late at night. Granny Zhao came to deliver supper. Fortunately, it wasn't chicken soup this time. It was light dessert, Han Yunxi's favorite. Su Xiaoyu followed behind Granny Zhao. She was very quiet and didn't go up to serve. She had to admit that she was afraid of Long Fei Yi. She felt guilty standing in front of him for too long. If Granny Zhao hadn't asked her to help bring the dessert, she wouldn't have come up. After they went downstairs, Su Xiaoyu gossiped in a low voice, "Granny Zhao, it's so late. Is His Highness going to stay the night?" Granny Zhao shook her head. No one knows what this master is thinking. Perhaps His Highness Duke of Qin really did stay, or perhaps he'd go out again later. Granny Zhao, why hasn't His Highness Duke of Qin visited the esteemed Wang Fei before? Su Xiaoyu asked, feigning innocence. How do you know? Granny Zhao asked unhappily. His Highness has only stayed the night once. He definitely didn't stay the night that time. They woke up really, really early. Su Xiaoyu said seriously. It was normal for wealthy nobles and imperial relatives to have many wives and concubines, so there were many courtyards in their residences. The head of the household usually had his own courtyard and wouldn't stay with a specific woman. He would only stay the night in his wife's courtyard when he felt like it. This was the same principle as how the emperor favored his imperial concubines. Logically speaking, Han Yunxi should also have her own courtyard in the Duke of Qin's residence. She had always stayed in Long Fei Ye's hibiscus courtyard, which was already a special case. Granny Zhao was unhappy. You little girl, why are you so concerned? Isn't it all for esteemed Wang Fei's sake? Su Xiaoyu said, feeling wronged. Hurry up and get to work. Prepare the tea leaves and refreshments for tomorrow, Granny Zhao urged. Su Xiaoyu immediately retorted, esteemed Wang Fei is still recuperating. She won't get up early to make tea tomorrow. What if His Highness stays the night? Won't His Highness drink it? Granny Zhao asked patiently. Sometimes she felt that little Yu was very smart, but other times she felt that she was as stupid as a pig. Yu understands. I'll go right away. Su Xiaoyu quickly went to the courtyard to prepare. There was a small stove placed next to the tea table in the courtyard a few days ago. It was the stove she had mentioned before. Su Xiaoyu quickly prepared everything. She didn't do anything. She wasn't stupid enough to do anything in front of Long Fei Yi, and she definitely wasn't stupid enough to leave any evidence. She raised her head to look at the loft and sneered in her heart, Your Highness Duke of Qin, if you visit Han Yunxi, perhaps you can save her from a physical disaster. Although she was afraid of Long Fei Yi, even the strongest man would let his guard down when he was in the midst of making love. She naturally dared to peek. Su Xiaoyu waited and waited, but unfortunately, she waited in vain. Late at night, Long Fei Yi got up and tucked Han Yunxi in as usual. It's time to sleep. Your Highness should also rest early. Han Yunxi could see that he was exhausted. Long Fei Yi nodded and left without another word. Han Yunxi clearly hadn't expected anything, but when she saw him close the door, she still felt very disappointed. Not long after Long Fei Yi left, she called for Granny Zhao. Starting tomorrow, prepare a portion of the chicken soup you prepared for me and a portion for His Highness. Yes. Granny Zhao was overjoyed. His Highness Duke of Qin basically wouldn't drink the soup she brought, but with esteemed Wang Fei's words, she could add oil to the fire and persuade His Highness in all sorts of ways. The next day, Han Yunxi was still being served by Granny Zhao. Of course, she could already go to the study. However, the detoxification system had just recovered, so she didn't dare to make any big moves. For the time being, she put the beauty's blood and perplexing butterfly illusion aside. On the third day, Han Yunxi wanted to go out to Bailey Mingxiang, but Long Feiyi didn't let her go out. But no matter what she said, Long Feiyi wouldn't let her go out. Han Yunxi, who had been immersed in her little happiness, finally realized that something was wrong. Long Feiyi had actually ordered Granny Zhao not to let her go out long ago. Han Yunxi was gloomy. "I'm already fine. You're putting me under house arrest. You need to rest for at least a month." Long Feiyi said. "Have Gu Beiyue come take a look. I'm really fine. If I'm cooped up at home, I'll get sick from boredom," Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Feiyi didn't even think before replying. It was Gu Beiyue who said you needed to rest at home for a month. Han Yunxi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. At this time, Granny Zhao hurried over. "Your Highness, a guest requests an audience." "A guest requests an audience?" Anyone who could come to the Duke of Qin's residence to request an audience wasn't an ordinary person. After all, everyone knew that His Highness Duke of Qin rarely received guests. Since Granny Zhao had come to report, this person shouldn't be simple. Han Yunxi was still trying to guess, but who knew that this person was looking for her, and not Long Feiyi? Granny Zhao said, "Your Highness, it's Miss Mingxiang from the Bailey estate. She requests an audience with esteemed Wang Fei. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."